Okay, we're live. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be back. So today, before we get into the discussion, I wanted to mention that next week we are going to celebrate a 2-day event, which is titled "Our Beautiful and Beloved Struggle," celebrating Anthony Montero's 80th birthday. And it's going to be a political event where we really talk about what it means to stand on the revolutionary foundations on which we stand, and also the legacy of a revolutionary life, and what it means to stand on that and what it means to carry it forward. So before we get to it, I just wanted to say that it's going to be a 2-day event. We're going to have it's going to begin on the 31st of October at this church. The event is going to begin at like 5 p.m. on Friday. And on Friday, the session is going to be on our study of the Black social system, which produced you. And it's going to be, it's what we're calling a pageant. And, it's going to have musical and dramatic performances to really bring out the life worlds of Black Philadelphia, and especially the kind of influences that had shaped you early on. And on Saturday, the second day, 1st of November, we're going to have a full day's program where we'll talk about the meaning of intercivilizational unity in this time, and we're going to have 3 sessions to talk about intercivilizational unity, and a panel to discuss really the concrete ideas of DuBois, which are exemplified by the life you have led, and which we really inherit, and which Free School has over the last, I guess, 13 years has brought out, has sharpened and advanced in studying the changing world. And finally, we're going to have the concluding session, which is going to be a discussion to address the future, which we're titling as the message to the messengers. Maybe you want to.
Just a little more about the different sections, and then Sharon can also you can tell me about the collection and like on the shelves. But the first, so October 31st, which is Doc's actual birthday, is we titled "A Native Son of Philadelphia," and we wanted, the whole idea is that a lot of people pay attention to Doc as a communist, which is not wrong. And it's an important part of your life, but no one knows the substance of why it was such an important part of Doc's life information. But we wanted to start that first evening to establish Doc as a Black revolutionary. His consciousness and lifelong commitment to the freedom of his people as a source of freedom for the people. And so we wanted to make it really clear that Doc as Doc, that he comes because he's produced, and the roots of his consciousness and commitment come from generations of heroic men and women, heroic Black men and Black women. And so we wanted to find a way to actually describe like all the things that Doc has also taught us about the Black social system, the way he grew up as a civilization in potentiality, and in fact, perhaps a new civilization. And so we wanted a way to be able to weave together the values, the music, the types of human beings, the ideas, the leaders in the political movement, these flowers of this great civilization that comes from generations upon generations of men and women from the South who then moved to the North and are building upon a foundation of freedom already by people like Richard Allen, Absalom Jones, churches, and producing just a flowering of this ecosystem that protected and raised and nourished young men and young women like Doc at that time. And what we're trying to say is, look at this revolutionary spirit. Look at what men and women fought for against white supremacy. And this is the weaving of ideas and values based upon the life world and life experience and historical constitution of the people that must be defended. it must be treated and respected as a revolutionary civilization. So that's kind of the goal. That's the goal of Friday evening, and I think we're trying to do something very ambitious, but we want to try to do it an attempt to actually be able to weave as much as we can with institutions and people we know. So it will include it. The program starts with the dictatorship of the Black proletariat in South Carolina, vis-a-vis Du Bois's Black Reconstruction. And the hope is, as of right now, I need to check in on them, but many of Doc's grandchildren will be the dramatic reciters of Du Bois. So they will carry the voice of Du Bois and the gift of truth that Du Bois has given us. And they will read sections of Chapter 10 of Black Reconstruction, the Black Proletariat in South Carolina, which, as we know, Du Bois originally wanted to title the Dictatorship of the Black Proletariat in South Carolina. But then he got pushed back. People were like, is it a dictatorship of the proletariat in the real Marxian sense? But Du Bois is basically saying it was. Here you have a state in Reconstruction, because it was such a large plantation state of slavery, where after emancipation, there are more Black people than white people. And then what happens when you attempt to build a new state, a new government? Well, you end up with a state legislature, and you end up with essentially a government that has not just formerly enslaved people just a few years ago, making decisions on behalf of the people, things like free education, public education, things like should every child be required to go to school or not. So we're painting South Carolina, because Doc's mother's side is from South Carolina, will include, okay, so basically the point of this program is it's also a musical and poetic narrative of Doc's biography, which is not just his own biography, but it's a biography of the whole people. And it starts with the dictatorship of the Black proletariat, where Doc's granddaughter, Naima, will read this very complex but important passages from Du Bois's Black Reconstruction. Serafina, I'm dubbing her as the singing narrator. So she, throughout the program, will also provide certain touchstones through song. So she will start with one of Du Bois's mother's favorite blues songs, either a Dinah Washington song or an Ella Fitzgerald song.
Oh, my mother.
Yeah, your mother. Okay. And so she'll be almost like a Greek muse, singing a cappella. Okay, South Carolina, and then Mother Bethel AME Choir will sing a selection of spirituals, which have a lot of significance in the history of Black folk, but also then become very important freedom songs of the civil rights movement. So things we suggested, "Oh Freedom," "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder," and "Keep Your Hand on the Plow." And Doc and I had this incredible meeting with the new pastor of Mother Bethel AME this week. She was young and vibrant, and Doc and I are so used to having to convince people, and then they said no. But it was so amazing that she just said, "Oh, you don't even have to sell me on it. We're in. Like, we will be there." And so we're really excited, and we're very honored that Mother Bethel AME Choir, this great choir of a great historic Black institution, just a few blocks down, will come and sing these spirituals. The next section of the program we'll talk about the emergence of the Black social system in Philly. So after the defeat of Reconstruction, the defeat of the possibility of a new society of freedom being brutally put down, then being this revolution being pushed backwards to Jim Crow. Then you have the Great Migration of new men and women coming to the North, including Doc's own family, to cities like Philadelphia. And we'll have audio voiceover from Doc, taken from interviews that Herb and Nuri and Serafina have been doing with him, to also kind of illustrate his biography. Serafina will sing "Come Sunday" by Mahalia Jackson and Duke Ellington, that version. And then we'll have a 3-man back-to-back kind of reenactment of a sermon by Leon Sullivan called a sermon by Leon Sullivan titled "The Spiritual Interpretation of Freedom Through the Christian Experience of Frederick Douglass." Right? And I mean, I really didn't know much about Leon Sullivan other than his legacy, but finding these sermons from Muslim, you realize that this is the voice that a young Doc, even if he was not totally conscious, was growing up with. A voice that was not just biblical, but a voice that, I mean, literally in the sermon, Leon Sullivan says, religion is not Christianity is not a Gothic cathedral. It is about freedom, and the person who best embodies our Christianity is Frederick Douglass. I mean, how deep is that? And so, because, so we're trying to describe that Doc grew up with these revolutionary leaders. Like, these are revolutionary leaders in Philadelphia, our own city, who maybe their name is known, but their essence, we really want to raise that essence that Doc grew up with. So we're really honored that a member of Zion Baptist Church, who's an actor, Steve Crone, he's going to embody this historic figure and do a dramatic reading of the sermon, some part of the sermon. Then Doc's grandson, Geronimo, will perform a short speech by Muhammad Ali about why he refuses to go to Vietnam. And then lastly, we're hoping that one of our friends, Nafis, will perform a selection from A Time to Break Silence by Martin Luther King Jr. And the whole idea is that these three men will perform these historic speeches to show the revolutionary spirit of the time, to show that this is the crystallization of consciousness from generations of men and women. It's the same crystallization that is like the wind beneath Doc's wings as a young man. That Doc is special to us. Doc is special, but he's one of many, many, many young men and women. What's possible when you have something like this? And then Alfie Pollett, we're really lucky that Alfie Pollett will then build on that and perform a medley, what I'm calling a peace medley, a peace and love medley of jazz and R&B. And he will together synthesize, like, through the musical democratic expression of Black folk. He will show through music and art that democratic revolutionary spirit. Okay, then last section is we end with talking about the new men and new women, new human beings produced by the civilization. So one of Serafina's friends, who's a dancer, Jamil, he will perform a dance to A Song for You by Donny Hathaway.
Oh.
And then after that, Nicole, Doc's daughter, and Catherine Blunt, and then I was going to ask you this, Fatih, but I'll ask you now. And I was hoping Fatih to.
Come on, man.
Could you
Don't make me sweep the floor then.
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, we do need a sweeper, but okay. We do need a sweeper for the dancer.
Well, my back.
Okay, yeah. I'll talk to you. So, maybe Fatih, Nicole, and Catherine Blunt will give short testimonials about Doc's mother. So, talking about Doc's mother as a concrete version of new woman, working woman, strong woman, beautiful woman, produced by the civilization. Because Doc's mother is such an influence, not just on Doc, but many people in the community. And Doc's mother is one of many extraordinary women who really held it down. So that's going to be the next part. And then we'll conclude with Doc's granddaughters and Nicole doing a dramatic recitation of The Immortal Child by DuBois, showing that here you have a civilization that worships as its God, the immortal child. Okay, and then that's Friday. So
That's just right.
You'll need them too.
So that's Friday. Very ambitious, but I think we can pull it off. We're working hard. And then, like Shimbarto said, laid out, second day of the roundtable, the first roundtable will be America's War on Civilization Demands Intercivilizational Unity of the People, where Nanatan Raju will zoom in from India. And I think we'll have Alice, she'll just be coming back from China. She'll be on this roundtable, as well as Nerd, moderated by Jahan. And the point of this roundtable is to, one, raise the paramount question of war and peace in this time. The paramount question of war and peace for humanity, but also as a democratic demand of the people in this time, looking towards a new future, a new nation. Okay, that's all what I'm about to say. It's part of it. Part of it is also through us having this political roundtable, it is also a way of showing one of the fruits of Dr. Montero's contributions is he has produced a whole cadre of young peace activists who will forever carry forward this mandate of the people against against white supremacy, against Zionism, against warmongering, against a war industrial complex, neocolonialism, raising up intercivilization, unity, and peace. The second roundtable, the second panel will be the rediscovery of W.E.B. Du Bois, a Black Swan, as Shubarto noted, where we will really move forward ideas that yes, are reclaimed from Du Bois, recovered from Du Bois, as they should be, but also moved forward because of Doc's work over the past 15, 20 years. All the way from Temple to where knowledge really comes from the people, through free school. We will talk about concepts like the centrality of the Black worker in the American revolutionary process, revolutionary sociology, Pan-Asia and Pan-Africa. And then lastly, the all-humanity struggle, addressing the DuBois-Lenin synthesis. And we will talk about how these are all ideas that come from Doc and the free school, through years and years of hard work, talking to the people, advancing these ideas for freedom, advancing this thought, and being able to describe why it is the game changer for now, why it's taken up by the people, it's taken up by the youth and children. We can provide more oxygen and clear the path towards a revolutionary path to freedom. And then the last roundtable, Message to the Messengers, which of course comes from the Gil Scott-Heron song. And Gil Scott-Heron is one of Doc's classmates at Lincoln University. Again, just the number of men and women revolutionaries produced from that time. Like, let's just not, this isn't about us saying, oh, remember the good old days when people were great, but saying, well, let's explain why. Why were the possibilities expanded? What have we lost? What must we fight for?
Yeah.
So Message to the Messengers to build a new civilization. This will be a roundtable moderated by Michelle. It will have people like Doc on it, Brandon Doe, Jeremiah Kim, and we're still in conversation of the remaining activists, but we think it might include people like Kalila from Lucy Black Library, and it will be a very dynamic, futuristic roundtable about if we take seriously the 5 interlocking crises of America, the domestic crisis. What would it take? What is our assessment of the people? What is our assessment of the time? And also, what must we fight? What must the revolutionary struggle look like? Addressing what and who moving forward? Things like a new cultural revolution, art and music, science, knowledge. What do we mean when we say we need jobs? Is it just about the material jobs? Or is it about the way that it is a direct attack against the revolutionary vanguard of society? So we'll be engaging in a very concrete, futuristic discussion, and I think we'll try to take forward a lot of things that Crystal has been talking about these past few months, I think. And then last thing is, do not forget that Saturday evening will end with the Rhythm and Blues dance party. We'll end with the Rhythm and Blues dance party, which is just as politically serious as the rest. So make sure you stay there. And there will be food and cake on both days. So yeah, we hope you will all come, and we hope to also do justice to our teacher, friends, and and freedom fighters. So.
Yes, and that's great. And as another one of the wings of the celebration, we're going to publish what has been conceived of as a short collection of some of Doc's works and writings and lectures and speeches from over the years of his life. And I think maybe we're considering also doing a longer project as well beyond this event, just because many different hands and eyes and minds have been involved in this project of trying to kind of excavate, Doc's life, and which is also, that visit that we made to the NYU archive, and then that has really dovetailed with this publication project, and we've been transcribing, we've been finding essays from many different places, and basically trying to pull it together into something which captures, I guess, two things. One of which is the unique contribution by Doc to the world struggle of ideas, the world battle of ideas, and especially this rediscovery of Du Bois as the central thinker for humanity, especially in this century and moving forward, and trying to capture that this was some like the process that was involved, especially in the wake of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and this reworking, this rethinking of philosophy, of science, of knowledge, and how that laid the seeds for what became basically the free school in our way of thinking, which we continue to advance and not stay still, but always are moving, you know. And the other part is, I guess, behind that, trying to capture like the totality of Doc as a complete thinker and a revolutionary and someone whose thought is really propelled by his belief in Black people, his belief in freedom, his commitment to freedom and to struggle, and never stepping away from. And I'm also getting this from what I've heard from the interview as well, but always moving to the front of struggle and never moving to the back. And so we want to try to capture Doc as a philosopher, Doc as this like this theorist, and so we're trying to include different publications that show different sides of Tony Montero and his contributions, which are not just the kind of polemic stuff, not just the theoretical, but all of it together.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to capture, all of the dimensions of Doc's life and his contribution and who he is as a thinker as well. And so yeah, we're hoping to have that ready by Friday.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I agree. And to add a little bit, the movement of ideas over the span of Doc's life as a mirror or an expression of the American revolutionary process through qualitative stages in the development of the crisis, as well as the period of the freedom struggle. And then I would just say that we also dedicated a portion of the collection to more of the recent writings and lectures from Doc in the era of the practice of free school. And that's so that we can really investigate or explain what is the political objective and what is the political strategy of free school as a project that meets the crisis as it is today. And so I think we spent a lot of time thinking about which writings and why. And for a lot of the historical writings, we identified the ones that had hit on, the central political and ideological questions for that time. And through that, we see your consistency, as a revolutionary theorist. But I just wanted to say we also really wanted to highlight free school today. Like, for example, we're including the mission statement from the 10th anniversary. We see a sky and this is why, and this is how we will fight for it.
And could I add something? Yeah, don't forget to mention his commitment to addressing the issue of global imperialism.
Right.
Because some people think he's just a disgruntled Black man Philadelphia. But he didn't quite complaining about the police. When I met him, he was giving delivery on South Africa. And that was so long ago I forgot. Apartheid.
Yeah, I think, this is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I can also say a little bit about the interview, which we did the last session of, and there's always a possibility we might want to come back. Doc is scared of it, but I think it was a very fruitful process and we learned a lot on the way, because going into it, I think the project had seemed so broad that it was very difficult to envision the path through it. But I think
we did 4 sessions of 2.5 to 3 hours on average of asking but also talking to Doc about the breadth of his life. And from the beginning, the idea was to lift up Doc's life as representative of, like Emily was saying, a civilization and a people and a struggle. And I think we spent a lot of time for that reason on the subject which will be central to the first day of the event, which is the Black social system, and what it produces. Where in Black, this is something Doc said yesterday, where in Reconstruction, Black Reconstruction, DuBois like sort of puts forward the hypothesis that this is a civilization in potentiality, but what became was an actual civilization, which through its music, through its religion, its gods, but also the quality of men and women that it produces, carries the seed, the revolutionary kernel for the remaking of this country and the remaking of its people. And so we went really autobiographical in sort of using Doc and Doc's life and his experiences to describe that life world. How, from the very beginning, it was a segregated life world. It was circumscribed by the white supremacist social system, but it was never a retreat. It was always for freedom. It was always for struggling against whiteness. And this is why, basically, even when we talk about the Black freedom struggle, it is rooted in that first commitment of the Black life world to freedom and peace and justice. And the other thing that was very significant was also to go through Doc's intellectual and ideological development through his time at Lincoln, but then also Chicago Temple and so on. But most importantly, as a member of the world, as a participant in the World Communist Movement, mentored by the great Henry Winston, where Doc makes it very clear that him wanting to even join the World Communist Movement was because it was this great coalition for peace. And that was what that was the natural ground for the Black struggle to be operating on. And it also basically opened up, like Fatih was saying, to the question of world humanity and solidarity and closeness with the oppressed everywhere. And yeah, there's just, it was very deep because the Doc's time as a member at the national level of the CPUSA, being mentored by Winston, but also other Black elders like Ishmael Flory, Doc, I mean, I won't, Patterson, and so on, how important it was to basically the foundation on which Doc has stood and struggled all this time. And so we spent a lot of time going over that and the interconnectedness of that with the Black struggle, where even after the assassination of King, when there was this attempt by a repressive but also steadily strengthening state to attack the Black struggle, to weaken it, there was this emerging synthesis between the Black struggle and the world communist movement or the communist movement in this country under Winston to move together towards peace, where Coretta Scott King, James Lawson, most of the leadership of SCLC was moving towards the World Peace Council and the world communist movement's strivings for peace. And Winston was defending the civil rights struggle, trying to basically assess and reassess what the future of the Black struggle should look like and so on. And after this, after the fall of the Soviet Union, there comes a period of crisis and an ideological vacuum. And we also talked very candidly about how free school in its initial conception was also in some ways, whether or not that was deliberately how it was set out, was trying to respond to that ideological vacuum, which the university, which the ultra leftists were trying to fill with garbage that confuses more than clarifies, that weakens the capacity of the people. So we talked about, the last session really was talking about free school, its bona fides, what principles it stands on, and how it sees the future. We also talked about why philosophy and Black liberation together, the ideological struggle together with closeness and knowing the people and learning from the people, theory and science together with political practice. And the other thing we also discussed a lot was in its present composition, the Free School is a multi-generational but also multi-civilizational organization. And that not being just like chance, like something that just happened randomly, but reflecting something about how the whole world is changing in some ways, where ideological relationships between Asian, African, Latin American countries with the white world are actually undergoing a fundamental transformation. And we see Free School as reflecting some of that. And yeah, I mean, I know Doc is going to talk about Free School a little today, so I won't I won't reveal everything. But all I'll say is, and Nuri and Serafina should add, it was a very rich discussion, and I think it was very important to do. And I still feel like there are gaps in Doc's life we haven't covered because it's that broad and that deep. But I think this is going to be a contribution to even clarifying the record of what the struggle was in the 60s and 70s, but then also in the 90s leading up to now, and clarifying what Free School represents for the future.
Yeah, I feel like you did a really good job, like describing the whole process. Like, I don't really have much to add. Just that it was a really deep experience, like getting to learn more of the detail and like the picture that you painted. And I feel like there are a lot of lessons that we're processing from the interview that like we're going to take and carry with us, like for the future. Yeah, so I think some of it is also that it's good for us to be clear like what Free School is, where it comes from, and yeah, like how we struggle and where that comes from too. And I think just clarifying what it is that we inherit, like from you and like the revolutionary traditions of struggle, and how we are also free to go towards new things because it's a new time, and there are new things that are required of that. And so I think just like this thing of inheriting and respecting like the people and the traditions, but then also never being stuck in like dogma, but actually being free to go towards the future, to pursue freedom. I think it's just
that was very heartfelt. I really appreciate how you talk sometimes because
Speak up a little bit.
it's direct. In addition to how long you have struggled and participated in the movement, I was hesitant because I was emotional about doing the interview because of how much of an impact and meaning Free School has been in my life and what it also means, like you're saying, for the future. And I think it's true. You said it, Mary. Condensing the ideological developments of the Free School has also allowed us to move forward in a more clear way. And in what we're saying is it's synthetic, and meaning that it can grow along the process, which is why it's exciting to move into the industrialization. Like that. You know, because it's another level, I think, that we're now experiencing, because it's a qualitative change, I think. The interview was very intense and purposeful, and I really appreciate it.
Well, even from like across these different like avenues of the celebration, I think the thing that I have found very strongly is that we're learning about Doc's life, but it's weird because I feel like I'm also learning about myself. It's like Doc's life helps to explain each of us and who we are, what we think, how we see the future. And that has been very important for me, definitely. Like it helps. I was like, oh yeah, this helps to explain like, oh, this part of myself which I hadn't fully understood before. And this is something which has been formed through the life of you, and also, but more so even by like the history that you participated in. And it's important for people, like Mary was saying, for people to know where that comes from, in order to know like where you need to go. So.
Okay. Maybe we could start.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
No, just what you said, what everyone has said. I just thought this couldn't come at a better time. Obviously, your birthday is your birthday, but one, it's a huge crisis. I was having some conversations with other people, Jahan, for example, to start to prepare for, some of the pieces of, the speaking portions, but even like, my God, like what a time to be able to have such a radiant and powerful message when there's so much unraveling, there's so much confusion, there's so much uncertainty, there's clearly so many cracks in the mirror of like white supremacy, to use a phrase that I think Magna will often say. There's so many cracks in, the cost of empire, and there's so many, it's so clear the ruling class is so fragmented, and the people are so dissatisfied, the world's people, American people, Black folk, and at the same time, there is so much confusion, there is so much diversion, and there is so much of an assault on the people. And to say that to uphold your life, but in the midst of that, we're also upholding Winston and DuBois and Robeson and Muhammad Ali and Baldwin and King. And then to say, yeah, like again, not just be like I think we've all probably seen a lot of celebrations done by other organizations, say their figures or their founders, and it just is like a rah birthday party. Like, we will have, I think, festivities, decorations, really beautiful things, and it will be a celebration, but it won't just be about the past, it won't just be about memory lane, it won't just be about nostalgia, it really will be focused on the future now. And I feel like there couldn't have been a better time for a celebration or even a task like this to be taken up, and there's not a better opportunity to assess like the record. And I just have to say again, like that others have said, which is even though I joined free school about 5 years ago, and then I mean having had opportunities to ask people who are part of free school longer, say like Jahan, Megna, Roger, member to another extent, but then to obviously talk with you about what free school looked like. It's also just so beautiful to know where kind of like, I think this is a phrase we sometimes talked about or use amongst ourselves, but kind of the ideological, intellectual history of development, journey, origin story of free school through your, so you can trace it all the way back to like you coming up in a very special and incredible time, but also the choices you made and the incredible sacrifices that are required to always be putting back on the table the option, the revolutionary option, the option of DuBois, the revolutionary option of peace and humanity. And that obviously comes from somewhere else, and it comes from, that's why we go all the way back to even the anti-slavery, but also Reconstruction struggle. And to be able to really clarify what it is that we're inheriting, to know where we're going forward is, it's really, fortunate and lucky that we're able to do something like this when, like, as other conversations we've been having, a lot of people have very few options. You were saying that at one point we were talking about white folk, very few options in this time. But a lot of young people, very few options in this time. Most people feeling like they don't have a positive, whether it's an outlook or like somewhere to channel their energy. People, I just feel really fortunate that this is what we have, and this is why we're celebrating it.
I take it all of this is going to be on video somewhere. The other thing is, I'm just glad that there is some effort to wrestle with where we are at present. For lack of a better word, I look at things in terms of the Black community, and you sense not the level of readiness to grab hold of the stuff that needs to be grabbed among us. And
in a sense, what crystallizes that for me was the decision last year that Morehouse made to have Joe Biden as the speaker. I mean, come on. Uh, um, you would hope and pray and expect that an institution like that would have the kind of vision and the understanding to, hey, we can't go there. And unfortunately, that's exactly where they went. But this all looks incredibly impressive. I have to expand my brain.
So I want to ask the doc something that I think needs to be put in the policy. What do you call those learning sessions that you used to do on Sundays? I mean, they used to go at Johnson House sometimes. Was it Saturday or Sunday?
No, they were Friday nights.
There were Friday evenings.
Yeah.
I know
Just
first
study
time I
groups.
encountered that where people got together
Mhm.
and there was that to me was a seed for preschool.
Yeah.
You know, independent. Anybody involved, we're always impressed me that when Tony says, you're welcome, he means it. You have PhD, you've done versus suicide, because you had a problem with your job, somebody could be, activist, black Muslim, ready to blow something up, and Tony will calm you down. So he brought all of the, what I noticed about him, this all my life and his life, is that whenever I would stop by his house, he would always be talking to neighbors. He was always accessible to common people. So it wasn't one of those African Americans, you know, you get a little 2x4 degree certificate first, and then you start not mingling with people, you don't say good morning, you know, and then you get the BA, and then you move out of town, then you get the PhD and move up to Plymouth meeting. What Tony did, no matter how high he went, he always had the door open for the folk. When I think of the folk, I think about him.
Yeah.
He never left being a folk.
Yeah, actually that reminds me something, I forgot to say, there will be a vision statement slash formal but actual biography of his whole life, that will read on both days. And there's a lot, I was looking at our draft, there's a lot that you've brought up, Fati, in the past. Like even when you were talking about Temple, how Doc's classes were the anomaly because
Right.
both not just formally enrolled students in undergrad or grad students, but people who were just taking classes, people from the community who just wanted to attend. His lecture halls and events were always open. And like a lot of the details you just gave to will be the things that we'll include in the formal actual biography. So yeah, that stuff is helpful.
Yes, it's important to, if you look at him, no matter where he was the same. Those Sunday or Friday evening gatherings, people express their thoughts, and very much like preschool. What was that, Tony, we met that union, it was work development. What was the
Oh, yeah. The Terry Doak.
Doak.
Yeah, I forget exactly, but it was a federal, something, I forget
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. Yeah, it was basically developed. It was a union sponsor, wasn't it, Tony?
Yeah.
Union for the workers. That's how I met him. He was teaching workers. I came in. I was dealing with the Spanish-speaking workers. You know, teaching the English, basically ESL. Now I wasn't certified in anything, but I was brought on board. So that phase. So okay, I found out he graduated from Lincoln. He was thinking about going back to college. I watched him go through all the phases. I remember when he worked on a PhD, I would come by, telling him, I'm working on, and of course, you know him, papers all over the place. And then I would see all these big words, and I said, oh, heavens. You know, so I watched him grow. Then we got the job at Temple, and you talk about popular. You go to his office. You had to get a chair. It would be like this. This is the office now. We're not talking seminars. And then people would be, I would sit there, you get people look like the United Nations. You can see them from other countries. He was always pro-international. That's why I always try the issue of global imperialism. To fully understand, you have to understand, it was about, let's deal with the real deal, Tony said. Let's just talk about Atlantic slave trade, Jim Crow, plantation life. Let's talk about what these imperialists did all over the world. That was a common denominator. He made it clear. Pacific, Caribbean, South America, Africa, even Eastern Europe and Russia. So that's where I became international. It wasn't taking photos, just casual conversations. I would take notes. He didn't know I was on the phone. So that's important. That always uplifting the community and see Temple students with him were just an extension of the community. He did not look at that as like, oh, I'm a university teacher now. No, he was always teaching back to pull up the book.
Yeah.
This is just from dealing with him. So I've never read a biography or what have you. And I'm honored that I'm even a part of this. And to watch the free school grow like it did, actually not just talk about internationalism, but actually perform it. Be it.
So should we move on? We're now going to move on. Just one thing, Purba, I think she's the origin of a lot of this, but she would always be asking me, why did I remain on the battlefield? Why did I remain in the struggle? Why didn't I retire and retreat and all of that? And I said, well, maybe, after thinking about this for some time, I said, well, maybe without my knowing it, I was waiting for you all to come. And you came, Well, today, we want to talk about free school, what free school is. And, in the face of huge and lethal forces of the state, the economy, and war, people legitimately ask, what can we do? They ask, what can an individual do? What can a small group of committed people do? People are asking, is social change even possible? Have the people, especially the poor, been taken out of history? People ask, has history ended? Others sometimes ask, are we in an era of revolutionary change, or did that end in the 20th century? Is morality dead? Is everything all about me? I know a lot of people think the free school is a group of starry-eyed utopian dreamers. Big question, I know, for free school, the moral choice, which asks, should we allow ourselves, but more than ourselves, those people that we care about, especially the poor and the oppressed, should we stand by and watch them go down this sinkhole that is the American social system? Is there a moral imperative that guide us, each and every one of us? A lot of people say, well, we'll wait and see what others do, and then we might act. The other question is, do ideas, especially big ideas, matter? And are they worth fighting for? So I guess at this point, we have to ask, not only for ourselves, but for other people, why is there a free school? Why do we continue this? Each and every one of us could be doing many other things on Saturdays, including sleeping. But why do we come here? And really, what has the free school evolved into? Um, I want to address these questions from angles of three foundations. One is the theory of political parties, or the theory of revolutionary political parties, generally associated with the Russian Revolution and Lenin. The second is the Black Freedom Movement, or the Black revolutionary tradition, usually, and I think not wrongly, associated with the names of DuBois, Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, and others. And the third, I guess, pillar of the free school is our concept of humanity and intercivilizational unity. First, Leninism. And this is a big question because, we see all around us leftists, some in political parties, some as collectives of activists, and in some way, be they anarchists, ultra-leftist, social democrats, Marxists of various types, their concept of political parties goes back to Lenin, and Lenin's concept of political party goes back to the French Revolution. The origin of modern political parties is in the French Revolution, where the various ideological sides that congealed after the revolution called themselves parties. And a political party was not a vehicle to elect people, but it was an instrument to conduct the ideological struggle. And so there was a kind of ideological purity to the various parties, and they made no excuses or bones about that. Again, the political party was a coming together of people who shared the same ideas and ideology. They would coalesce with, unite with others who were near them, sometimes those who were not so near them. Lenin took this and applied it to the revolutionary process in Russia. There was a broad social democratic revolutionary party in Russia called the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, which split into two wings, Mensheviks and Bolsheviks. Now, Bolshevik meant majority. The question is, did they really constitute a majority? Or at least they got the majority of votes at a decisive convention of this party. And the Mensheviks, who were the minority. But they separated on the basis of ideas, tactics, and strategy, which was then a throwback to the original French concept of political parties. And it was not unusual, and if you read Lenin and others, they talk about the purity of their ideas or the purity of their views. Now, Lenin infused into the concept of Bolshevism, or the Bolshevik wing, or the Bolshevik party as it came to be known, the concept of discipline, organization, and action to achieve state power. That was his, I think, innovation. But nonetheless, before taking power, before the Bolshevik Party became the Russian Communist Party and then the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, it adhered to this concept of a party as a coming together of people who shared the same ideas. And on the basis of those ideas, they would work out a program for the broad masses. They would work out strategy and tactics, how they would move, and so on. Now, unlike the early political parties that come out of the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Party, for most of its existence, was illegal and therefore underground, which could have been a benefit. They were not, and none of the political parties, by the way, were involved in popularity contests. They were not running for office. Their paramount objective was to change society, and that you change society by changing the ideological relationships in society. You could see the nobility of what they were attempting, the morality of it. You know, we believe in certain things and we are prepared to fight for those ideas. You know, what we call political parties today are essentially a form of politics that come out of the English tradition, which was then transferred to America, especially in the 1800s. But the idea of a mass political party that ran for elections and had a program, but did not have necessarily firm ideas to which it was committed. And so even today, if you look at the landscape of the left, for example, take the Democratic Socialist of America. Their idea is as a party to enter a larger party and take it over. That is, the Democratic Socialists of America's strategy is to enter the Democratic Party as a wing of it, as the left or progressive wing of it, and eventually to make the Democratic Party something like a social democratic party. And I, for one, I don't argue with them. And that is a form of politics that go back to the English idea of political parties. And such. You have other parties like the PSL, which whose name suggests that it was not always a political party. Party of Socialism and Liberation. It was more an activist coalition. Only recently have they announced themselves to be a Marxist-Leninist or Communist party, or in essence, a Communist party. However, they place more emphasis upon activism and organizing protests than upon ideas. So already you can see, like the DSA, they have moved a distance from Lenin's concept and the concept of a political party that comes out of the French Revolution. They have literally compromised to the environment and the environment of American political, the expectations that Americans have of political parties and the way politics is done. You take the Communist Party of the United States, of which I was a member for like 25 years. And, we found ourselves in a paradox where You want to be what was called a mass party. And this is a very important concept. What constitutes a mass party? Well, for many of us, we took it to be a party with a lot of people in it, you know. So we were always up against the ideological pressure coming from the ruling class, which attempts to marginalize us, and we're trying to win individuals to our party, recruiting people. But to do much of what we thought a political party should do required a bureaucracy of people who devoted their time to raising funds. And we were always talking about we have to raise money. We have to raise money for the newspaper. We have to raise money for the building, to pay the electricity. So you're always involved in those kind of details. And then there were many ancillary, I guess you could put extensions of the party. For example, in the area of peace, in the area of trade unionism, in the area of Black liberation. And so to sustain all of this, you had to have people, and even though they were paid very little, they had to be paid to function. We would call these people professional revolutionaries. Their work was to do the business of the revolutionary struggle. But as all of the details of holding a political party and its associated movements together, it became easy to lose sight of ideas in the ideological struggle, or to reduce the ideological struggle to very, I won't say simplistic, but to not deal with the complexities of social life and political struggle. For example, you know, it is easy to defer to what we would call the class conflict. And once you said that, then that was supposed to explain almost everything else. Or we would regularly, you would regularly hear people say, in the face of, let us say, a difference of opinion, well, I'm with the working class, which is a way of dismissing the opposition by saying, well, you're with the petty bourgeoisie. You know, this kind of narrowness. But I can tell you a lot was lost. And so it's so much so that in the Communist Party, I would say, a kind of anti-intellectualism became a culture, that the intellectual couldn't be trusted. Now, the Communist Party of the United States had a very high responsibility to the international movement because the United States is where the most rapacious and dangerous imperialism is housed. And it was, as we would say, our imperialism. We are responsible for the struggle against, quote, our imperialism. And since at the core of the reactionary movement is anti-Sovietism and anti-communism, you know, like Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King is a communist. You still hear that today. Or if you oppose the war in Vietnam, like say Jane Fonda, oh, she's a communist. Or Diane Nash going to North Vietnam, oh, that's because she's a communist. You know, everybody would be smeared with this, they're a communist. Any kind of struggle to change anything meant you were a communist. Even Father Divine's peace mission, we saw it, you know, so close up, and their advocacy of interracialism and interracial marriage and stuff made them communists. You know, I guess also because they believed in collectivity and giving food away to the poor and so on and so forth. But so we had to take on the harshest blows, the the hardest expressions of this counter-revolutionary ideology of anti-communism. Now, the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union had state power, so they had mechanisms of knowledge production. First of all, the whole university system of the Soviet Union, but then the Soviet Academy of Science, and they would produce all of these books on any number of topics, from physics to political economy to history, and so on and so forth. And we, all of us, many of us, would, consume this knowledge from the Soviet Union. And it was exciting because it was an alternative to the American social science and scientific academies, which everything, all knowledge from the United States, or most of it, if you dig below the surface, there was always an American nationalism, an anti-Sovietism, and a white supremacy, So to have something that was not that, you can imagine reading and, getting magazines and so on from the Soviet Union. But it made us, at the end of the day, intellectually lazy. So we did not know Du Bois. We did not know Baldwin, as much as we should have, I'll put it that way. Because we had more or less relied upon the Soviet Academy and the outlook, literally, of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union vis-a-vis the world movement. I had a friend who I've told you all a lot about, and he was a good friend, a mentor of mine, but he was so addicted and attached to the Soviet Academy. Before if you had a conversation with him, you'd be talking, and then he would have to say something like this: the Soviets said, So when the Soviet Union went down, it threw him in to a really profound existential crisis. But it was easy to become attached to this alternative system of knowledge. And I know Nuri and I, and Purba and I, and Sambarto, we at various times had gone to University of Pennsylvania Library and looked at the great Soviet encyclopedia, things like Kant and Hegel and yada. And they have, it's still a valuable resource. But it is not the last word, as it were. But I just wanted you to see how here in the United States, it was easy, if one were communist, and, excuse me, and often becoming a communist, and this is not for everybody, had to do with an alternative knowledge and ideological system. You know what I'm saying? Young person, why should I be satisfied with the ideas and ideology in the universities of a system that is waging a genocidal war in Vietnam? Or on and on, you could see. And here you could get journals, you could get newspapers from the Soviet Union in English, where they were talking about, for instance, you heard me talk about Marion and Guabe of the People's Republic of the Congo, or Sekou Touré of Guinea, and you would see large articles about them, or Indira Gandhi, and so on. A whole different world, a whole different system of information, that was not this one. And in comparison, this comes off as just rank propaganda. And that here we were learning about African independence movements, interviews with the head of the ANC or the head of the liberation movement of Zimbabwe, yada, yada, yada. But again, it then meant, I think, that the Communist Party of the United States ceased to be a party of ideas and ideology, and more a party of mobilization, of activism, and such. And often, just as another thing, we were often fighting on the back foot. It was often defensive. We had to as much defend ourselves from attacks, and the attacks were not just from the government. Every type of agent provocateur ideology, for example, just from the black point of view, or the black standpoint, cultural nationalism. Well, you take a person like myself, even up till today, there are cultural nationalists who do not like me, and I don't like them, who say that I sold out black people because I was in an interracial organization, the Communist Party, and so I'm fighting defensively. I have to defend myself in order to fully participate in the movement. This is why people, again, I just say this is why people like Lucian Blackwell, Henry Nicholas, and them are so important. Never, ever did I face that kind of discrimination from them. We could talk more about that, but nonetheless, this is the problem. And only with the breakup of the world communist movement did it then become possible to reconsider all of this, both from the United States and from the world movement. The present Communist Party of the United States has completely abandoned the ideological struggle. It is not a party of ideas. And I don't say that, I don't celebrate that fact, because I know so many of the people who lead it. I consider them friends. I don't know what they consider me. But, there are no ideas. It is all about Trump and the No Kings marches, or this march, or the other march. Miss you, man, Rhonda. You know what I'm saying? But there is no ideological struggle. The last whiff of that was Henry Winston. And what he represented, but a whole set of other people that gravitated to him. Then you take the American Communist Party, which is a split off from the Communist Party of the United States. I don't think they've come to a decision about what they are and what a political party is. I don't think they know. And, it's not a put down. It takes experience to understand these questions. And it takes some time to develop what your ideas are, what your ideology is. And, they're young, they're ambitious, but they just don't know. And I know for a while they wanted, me to be a part of it. Actually, they were trying to recruit me. No thing. But, I can't go there. It's like me going back to the kindergarten. I can't go back there. Now, and then I think differently. Uh, and then there are a slew, and have been over the years, of Trotskyist parties. The mother of all Trotskyist parties is the Socialist Workers' Party, and there's split-offs from that, the Workers' World Party and others, uh, uh, neo-Trotskyists, part Trotskyists, underground Trotsky, but Trotsky. Um, and I guess just the last were the Maoist parties, uh, which which popped up in the 1960s, really the late 1950s, over the question of the Soviet-China split. Uh, and they are sects. I want to explain to you what a sect is. A sect, when you define a group as a sect, it is not that you're saying, it's not, you're not measuring it by the numbers of people they have in their party. You define a sect by the character of their political outlook. I don't know, you guys have probably not experienced this, but at one time, if you lived in a certain political ideological universe with ultra leftists, all you did was attack one another over small questions of Marxist theory.
Right.
And fist fights and even knife fights could break out over these questions. That is what we call sectarianism, where you're all about the small universe. Um, but what I would like to say, what I believe we inherit from Lenin and the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution is this idea. But, oh, by the way, let me just say a bit about the Chinese Communist Party, which is not the same as the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and probably has one of the most unique histories in the development of a communist party. Maybe it is the Asian civilizational predisposition, but the Communist Party of China is a Communist Party of China. It really is. Uh, it begins in Shanghai in 1921, a meeting, a congress in a small girls' school. And I don't know, there maybe were about 15 or 20 of them who met. And they aligned initially with the Kuomintang and Sun Yat-sen. They were part, as communists, as a small group of ideologically committed, let us say, Marxist-Leninists. Whether they knew what all that meant at the time doesn't matter. That is what they proclaim, that is the banner under which they march, and they united with the democratic and republican program of Sun Yat-sen. Hugely important. But then they were attacked. After Sun Yat-sen died, and another group under Chiang Kai-shek took over the Kuomintang meaning the Nationalist Party, which is not, and by the way, it was not conceived by Sun Yat-sen and them as a narrow nationalist party. Nationalist meant the nation. They were democratic and a Republican party calling for democracy and for a Republican state. But when Sun Yat-sen dies, then Chiang Kai-shek and them say, literally to the communists, including Mao and others, that either you all bow down to us and join us and, literally disintegrate your own party, or there will be war with us. And there was war in Shanghai in particular. And hundreds of the initial members of the Communist Party were killed. And so the Communist Party had to retreat from the city and go to the countryside. And they had to rethink the theory of socialist revolution or revolution under conditions of China and under the conditions which they had to fight, which was the countryside. And this is very, very important. And actually, it was, as I can gather, this very small, committed cadre who were not afraid to retreat to the countryside and rethink. It's very dramatic, by the way. They ultimately, because Shanghai Shek and those were not going to give up. And they wanted to destroy Mao and the communists. For whatever reason, they saw them as a threat, which would lead, of course, to the Long March. And that's a story I don't fully understand how they did it, because they weren't that large. And but they called upon their followers to go on a literally 3,000-mile march, a retreat from the military of the Kuomintang. And in the midst of it, they had to reformulate who they were, re-identify who they were. And this was the first major break in the world communist movement with the quote, proletarian line of the world communist movement. And Mao and those said, it will be the peasants. And our fate, the fate of the communists and the fate of the Chinese revolution, which was really a Chinese national liberation struggle, will be with the peasantry. But of course, after achieving power, you end up with this party of 90 million people, which is really not a Leninist party as much as it is a part of the state. And, the big question is, where is the ideological center in China? I don't think the Chinese know. I know I don't know. But I would argue that there is not a Leninist party in China. They have the state, they have the Communist Party, which is a conveyor belt between the state and the masses. It is part of the management of civil society. It functions, I'll put it this way, as both a state and a semi-state mechanism. But then China has been, for the last 40 some years, involved in the practical tasks of economic development. One thing, that the last attempt to reform the Communist Party of China into a Leninist party or a Maoist party was the Cultural Revolution. And yeah, uh, there's a reason to argue. I can feel you, dog, but you went about it the wrong way. And what Mao was doing was attacking those who reformed the party not to be a revolutionary party, a party of ideas, but to be a party of the state. And that's still a problem in China. I don't want to minimize that. Uh, Let me just put that aside and go to the next pillar, which I think is more important in the history of the United States, and that's the Black Freedom Movement. And I say this because the ideological history of the Black movement and the Black people is ideologically richer than the history of Leninist and Communist parties. I know that sounds ironic, and I don't mean to. You could take it in all kind of ways. You could say I'm trivializing communism, and so on. But I'm not. Uh, the fact of the matter is, when you put, let's say, the canonical figures, I get this from you, the canonical figures of the Black struggle, let us say Frederick Douglass through Martin Luther King, each stage a different canon, a different canonical figure. And then you throw into the mix Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois and James Baldwin. That configuration of ideas is like the nucleus of an atom. The potential energy and power of that is greater and more significant than the body of knowledge, the body of theory and ideology associated with the World Communist Movement. And that is not to demean the World Communist Movement one single bit. But then to talk about the Black Freedom Movement is to talk about way more than the 1950s and 60s. We're talking about, in its most developed form, that movement of ideas and individuals and organizations that developed after the defeat of Reconstruction. And Reconstruction and its defeat is foundational and nodal. You cannot understand contemporary Black people, modern Black people, Black modernity, if you will, without understanding the defeat of Reconstruction. You cannot understand the Harlem Renaissance without understanding the defeat of Reconstruction and the Great Migration to the North. You cannot understand what Fawcett calls Black gods of the metropolis, what we call Black gods of the Black proletariat, without understanding the defeat of Reconstruction. In this sense, what we are saying, a people who were enslaved and had a moment where they thought democracy would flourish, and then being disappointed, being thrown back, would never accept the defeat of Reconstruction. And I would say that to understand African Americans, I mean, even the person that seems not to know a damn thing about anything or care about anything, the character of Black people is shaped by the fact that Black folk and our leaders have never accepted the defeat of Reconstruction. In this struggle to get our rights, which is the quintessentially democratic struggle of the West and maybe of world humanity. It became that. To say I have a right to due process of the law, I have a right to vote, and I will change this democracy to make it what it said it's supposed to be. You hear it in the speeches of all of these. I don't care whether it's Douglas or Martin Luther King. And I guess I can say, because it's committed to memory, I've heard it so much, that, but out of this refusal to accept enslavement and second-class citizen produces an intellectual environment unequaled in the world. And hence, to reclaim that is a life-death question in terms of revolutionary processes. If you can't claim that, don't come around Black people talking about, I'm down with y'all. You can't be, because the framework of Black thinking, Black consciousness, Black struggle is we never accepted the defeat of Reconstruction, and thus never accepted the lie, as Baldwin would say, of American democracy. Never accepted it. And it makes no difference whether every white person in America or in the world accept. We never accepted it. And out of that resistance comes art, comes beauty, comes religion, comes everything. A civilization rooted, anchored to a great cause that ultimately was identified with the cause of humanity. This, I mean, you know, I don't know that I need to document it for us, but that's it. So, you know, let us say you can get a person, the most fervent, I would say even the most dogmatic Marxist-Leninist. I'm with the working class. Well, I said, well, hold on, money, slow down. What does that mean? Who are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? But it is a way to veil the fact that this great paradox, this great contradiction that is the United States, rooted in the denial of rights to Black people. When you say, I'm with the word, I'm with the, knee-jerk, what you're saying is, I don't want to deal with the fundamental contradiction of American society. It is to be celebrated that great Black thinkers never gave up on this struggle. I know Kathy and John went to see a documentary about Curtis Mayfield. You know what I'm saying? And what Curtis Mayfield was a manifestation of was this great struggle. You know, when Marvin Gaye did What's Going On, he was reflecting this great struggle. You know, Barry Gordy and those at Motown said, well, we can't make music like that because it's not marketable. You know, but Marvin Gaye said, I can't live if I don't do this. You know, he was channeling his ancestors. And all of those feelings, that sometimes you gotta repress if you wanna be artistically or academically successful. You know, you have to compromise. But how long? And so he bursts out. And everything in the fiber of his body comes out in that. And it is a homage to his people. You know, just one thing, you know, the song Holy, Holy. It's holy, HOLY, and then, well, and WHOLLY. It is holy to be whole. And it's not well understood. Unity of the people is sacred.
Yeah.
All of this. So at the essence of the Black freedom struggle as it has evolved is civilization, the unity of civilizations and all of humanity. I don't know that there's ever been a people struggle that has been so open to all of humanity. We see it here in Philadelphia, when we go, let us say, to the United House of Prayer for All People. And, Jeremiah, a Korean Presbyterian, not in good standing with the Presbyterians, but in really good standing with the United House of Prayer for All People. Or when we go to the peace mission of Father Divine, a people who see all of humanity as one with them. And when at the United House of Prayer for All People, they mean that all people. They're not just faking the all people, that's real, So this all humanity, all civilization. John Coltrane and his wife, Alice, moved towards Hinduism. Don Cherry, the great trumpeter, towards Buddhism. Yusef Lateef, Islam. In fact, Yusef Lateef makes the argument that the original title of John Coltrane's A Love Supreme was really Allah Supreme. And if you listen to it, when the train is saying, Allah Supreme, it sounds like Allah Supreme, Allah Supreme. So this all humanity vision, as we fight and refuse to surrender to a racist ruling class. And certainly in the current moment, you talk about fighting Trump or the MAGA movement claiming to fight the establishment. It's almost like the kindergarten of revolutionary or people struggle, But how could it be otherwise? The failure of white people to come to a level of consciousness which sees humanity. And it is true, the more you think about it, unless white people abandon whiteness, they can never be free. And by abandoning whiteness, they come to an understanding that what they want or seek to can only be gotten if they follow the path of the Black struggle. Black music, Black art, Black literature. Stop trying to do it the white way. The white way is a failed way. You just can't do it. I mean, if you think about it, you can get a job with the white thing, but that's the thing, But anyway, I'll stop there. The third pillar is intercivilizational unity. Now, this is what makes the free school very unique. How to unite civilizations in one organization as a testament and as an example to all of the American people of how and what must be the nature and character of any revolutionary movement and revolutionary process in this country. One time we used to talk about a Black revolution, and that was appropriate for that time. But now few would talk about a black revolution as much as they would talk about a revolution of the people. But the free school has navigated and theorized this concept and have actualized it in practice. There's something organic about Black Chinese civilizational unity. This ain't no fake kind of something we just want to do because we got Chinese and Black people in the free school. Chinese in America, if they honor their civilization and who they are, cannot do it just as Chinese or as Chinese who are more or less white. The only hope, future, for Chinese in America, except getting a high education, getting a good job, if you're concerned about more than that, like who you are and your soul and your children, you will have to see the centrality of Black civilization. But these two civilizations come together. This is no better outside of us represented than in the Nation of Islam. Of all people who see now in this second resurrection, which is very different from the first resurrection, Chinese and Latinos, especially Mexicans, coming to the Nation of Islam, saying in effect, it's not just religion, but I want to fight oppression. I want to fight this system that takes my dignity as a Chinese person away from me. And where this has occurred and where this is developed is in the Black struggle. To abandon or to give up hope on this alliance, this organic unity of civilization, is to say one wishes to capitulate to white supremacy and submit to whiteness. This is the crisis of the Asian immigrant. Am I white with Chinese characteristics? Or am I Chinese, a modern Chinese in a Western nation? Same with India. Indian Black people is easy because we speak English. Both of us speak English. But there's been civilizational interactions between Blacks and Indians since the end of Reconstruction and the beginning of the modern Indian independence movement. Howard Thurman and Sue Bailey Thurman and Mordecai Johnson and all of these people going to India. King's my pilgrimage to nonviolence meant that he had to transcend the limitations of Western theology and philosophy and proclaim an ecumenical, he called it ecumenical unity, the unity of religions, the unity of spiritual systems, but in the purpose being for the sake of the struggle for freedom. When DuBois says that communism to develop must be built upon ancient Asian values, this is not insignificant, and it's the ground upon which we operate. I guess I don't know that there are many people who have read the unpublished manuscript Russia and America, so they might not know what we're talking about. And I know sometimes for us in free school, it could be impatient because we're talking about things and people ain't read the same thing, although they claim to be following DuBois, you know? But it's, anyway, we have to try not to be impatient. I start with myself, but but this thing where where Du Bois had already said that ancient Asian civilizational values would play an important role in the modern reconfiguration of ideas and of communism itself. And so, in this regard, with these three pillars that I talked about, it is not difficult for us in the free school to see new human possibility, even in a time where it seems very dark. And so many people have given up on people. We have not given up on people. And wherever the people are, we want to be there. And that's why, when Emily and I went to Mother Bethel, and it was as beautiful as Emily said, the way the pastor greeted us. And she's young and warm and bright and just, more than when you hear her preach. I told her that but when you meet her, I said, oh, I never thought you would be like this when I heard you preaching. She laughed. And, but it was like, I'm in, choir will be there. Just like that. Of course, Emily gave a very passionate, you know how you can talk. You should consider going into the ministry, by the way.
It turns out I am good at public speaking.
And preaching, public preaching too. Yeah. But she presented a really eloquent description of what we're trying to do. Just one thing, and this is from my experience in free school, and I'll end on this. I'm going to talk, if two people don't mind me using them as typologies, Nuri and Kathy. I mean, I just want to use y'all. And Asians, the predisposition, Asian from civilization, and how that manifests in this current situation. Kathy did a master's thesis at Penn on Barbara Bullock, which turns out to be Barbara Bullock and Elaine Fay, Arthur Hall. Really great, really illuminating, great scholarship. And I read it and I said, man, this is great, man. I said, but why didn't you fly? And I think she gave what you would expect to be a normal Chinese response. But I don't think my professors would have accepted it. It's what I took it to be is the socialization to do good, but to be cautious. To overachieve, but don't go too far. Don't challenge too much. And I still say, why didn't you fly? And then the other is the experience at Lucian Blackwell last Tuesday, which Lucian Blackwell is the bomb, I'm telling you, man. And we were reading the essay by Du Bois and talking about education. And I made the comment about how successful Asians are in education institutions. They outdo everybody. So much so that the majority of students, I think, at NYU are Asian. I mean, it's like, am I in Peking University or where am I, man? But I don't know what Trump is. So how you gonna put all these people out? And then, yeah, I think so. I mean, first of all, NYU can't survive without the money they get from Chinese students. So you would throw NYU into a financial crisis. But then what I saw at NYU was the future of the managerial elite. And it will be increasingly Chinese and Indian, and they can't get around it. So I say to some doctor, yeah, they're going to tell you to go back to India for the time being. But give them a year, they're going to be begging for you to come back because they can't, But so I mentioned how Chinese had achieved. And then Kathy and Nuri, I think even Jerry, said, yes, we, because of Chinese values, and these are ancient values, and they are not Western. I don't care how white a Chinese person wants to be. It's hard to scrub those values out of your soul. And there's certain characteristics of achievement, respect for elders, which means also family, and you don't want to disappoint your parents, of course. But then they said, and this is what, I forget there's one phrase I wanted to remember, but, I'll tell you. I hope you don't mind. Nuri and Kathy said basically, or similar things. Yes, we can do that. We can achieve academically. We kind of built like that. But then they said, but it's not enough. Kathy, I'm saying something. And I was sitting across the table from Kathy, and she was talking about, how she was raised to do what she does. And she said, I think your voice was a bit muffled. And I have a resentment towards my parents. He said, I've heard the same thing from Emily. Yes, you did well in preparing me to outcompete white people. But then when it came to the fundamental existential questions, you gave me nothing or very little to live in this world. And I think it's both tragic and a paradox of the Asian in America, especially the Northeast Asian, that has to be resolved. And it can, I'll just end on it, it can only be resolved intercivilizationally and in the discourse and practice of something like the free school. I'll end there. So I guess I'm making that case for free school. We are an ideological organization, but transcending the Leninist party narrowness and situating ourselves in this nation and the Black movement and its civilization, but then we are into civilization, the merging and fusion of civilization, producing new possibilities for new human beings to come out. And I just say this, I know Emily, I'm sorry, I forgot. Emily would regularly say, I'm Black. And I know she doesn't say it as much now, but it's very significant because this merger of China and Afro-America, and you do become Black. What we hope is that more white people become Black. You know what I'm saying? and by becoming black, shedding all of the garbage and so on of whiteness. And that whiteness is still the trap. It's the existential trap, which undermines any capacity to achieve unity and to achieve a revolutionary practice. You become, how would you say, without the black struggle, there is no other way but to just retreat into the self, to retreat from struggle, to literally capitulate to whiteness. You know what I'm saying? And that's the dilemma. And we are looking at ways to resolve the paradox, to resolve the contradiction. That's all I want to say. Go ahead.
You mentioned Emily's thing about I'm black. There's something that tells me that large numbers of black people that I come into contact with, at least, would find it incredibly liberating to hear somebody Asian say I'm black. Because we've been in the process of running away from being black for such a long time. And I think what's frightening is folks are out of touch, with what, you've been talking about and described. And that's just kind of heartbreaking when you realize that, heck, these are the people that I struggle with on Sundays and so forth, you know what I mean? But, but it just hit me very clearly.
Yeah.
If somebody Asian says I'm black,
Oh, it's a welcome recognition, I'm telling you. That it comes out of this black struggle where the world, we want the world to recognize us, to unite with us. It's really, I agree with you so much. Go ahead.
So, no, I think I agree with that. I think that, and I've spoken to you about this, the music that I've listened to is very different from the music that I listened to at one point in my life. And anybody who looks at my playlists won't really recognize me from a few years ago. And it's because, and I didn't really have to try very hard. It's just, I think that since I wasn't born here, but I came here and then I realized that, in order to get any kind of understanding about this country and the people within it, you have to go back to what is the revolutionary history of this country. And when you go back to the revolutionary history of this country, all you find is black freedom struggle. That is the revolutionary history of this country. And being acquainted with it is very difficult to not accept everything that comes with it, the art and the music and the beauty and the ideas by people like King and Baldwin and Robeson. I think that today's conversation was very clarifying, because usually when you have, at least in my experience, usually when you have a political party, I've noticed, or even a political movement, you usually have them in one of two forms. One, who are very, very comfortable in theory, those who sort of almost retreat into theory, who are like, okay, Marxism, Leninism is our foundational theory, and that is going to be our touchstone for everything, and that is what we are going to follow. Nothing can sort of sully the originality and the sort of unmutable nature of this text and this theory. And then you have another group of people who are like, theory is useless, let's do something. Always it's practice. It's always, we don't really have to think, we just have to go out there and do things. We have to go out there and, I don't know, yell at the police, go on marches, that feeling of, if I'm not actively doing anything, doing something, then I'm not contributing, then I have no purpose. And I think that preschool and I know that a long time ago, maybe Blaze, if you remember, Blaze and I have talked about this at one point in time when Blaze had told me that I've never found something like the preschool before. And I have to agree with him because I think this is where there is a kind of synthesis between those two things, where we're constantly trying to think and develop new theories. Like just in the past couple of years that I've been in Philadelphia, we've gone through so much, right? And we may be right, we may be wrong, and we may evolve and change what we think about things, but we still do it. We still do that intellectual work of formulating new theories, getting ideas from Baldwin and DuBois, and putting them together, trying to see if it makes sense in today's time. Um, just now, like you said, at one point we were like, this is going to be a black struggle, and now we're in favor of all humanity struggle. At one point, we were thinking about how um, how the American people can get out of a kind of hole, a crisis. But then a few years later, we were like, no, the American people are a geostrategic force for peace. All of these things, all of the evolving things that have come into play really um, highlight that this is a kind of unique space. I think that, you know, mostly when I think about philosophy and politics, I don't see a connection between them when people talk about it nowadays. Whenever I hear like all these podcasts, right? Like, I send you things, you send me things, and it goes on and on. But the question of philosophy is very devoid from politics, and when you think about um, even like well-known philosophers, how many of them even bring up the question of war and peace? And do we really think that philosophy is static, or does it have to necessarily be a movement of ideas? And I think that's what we believe, and that's what we try to think about. That nothing is static; everything is constantly changing, evolving. Um, the composition of preschool has evolved like, uh, quite a lot, and I think I'm constantly surrounded by some of the smartest people I'll ever get to meet. And I think my kind of journey has been very strange in the way that I think at one point I wanted to be white, and then there was a very drastic rejection. And then I think going through the year of Baldwin, going through all of these readings of the boys, I think it was important to understand, like even through all of that, all of those conversations we had on modernity and how Du Bois never rejected modernity, but he wanted to infuse it with a very American spirit, a very, you know, the spirit that comes out of the Black freedom and the Black struggle from the time of Reconstruction. And I feel like one of the things that is very clarifying from your presentation today is that we have to kind of try to, we have to be American. We have to not reject modernity and Westernness, but that cannot make us white. There's a very, I think there's a difference, and there's a sort of clear line, which even Baldwin talks about. In Taking to the Water, he says that 400 years in this country has managed to make me a Westerner, but it has failed to bleach me. And I think that's where we stand. Like all of these things that we talk about eventually bring us to the point of not relying on exclusively on an existing theory, but creating new theory, believing in a sky, um, and you know, understanding the world from a people-centric point of view rather than a power-centric. point of view.
I think that I was honestly kind of processing your presentation because, especially the ending, because I think, like, I mean, to be transparent, the reason why I don't say, like, I'm not as, I actually moving forward, this thing of I feel black or I feel like I am black is, I think it can be misconstrued. Sometimes I don't think the world is ready for that. And I don't think that's bad either. The way I see it is, I think perhaps there's a better language to describe the paradox in the resolution. That's why I don't say it. Because I think, because in some ways, the way I see it is the central paradox of America, which I think is also a central paradox of history at this moment, is the paradox of is democracy or civilization or humanity, human life itself compatible with white supremacy? And that's why I think we still hold on to a lot of what DuBois says, which is like the problem of the 20th century is the color line. And I think in a lot of ways, that's how we see the 21st century. Like there's a new way of being specific about it in this time. And at the end of the day, all of us in this room are part of that ongoing ironic experiment in America of civilizations. Can civilizations exist together and produce a positive, forward, progressive movement towards a more perfect human being, towards truth and beauty? Or will the world forever be in a trap of what Du Bois would call the negative contact of civilizations that comes from, in our minds, the origin of the transatlantic slave trade, and especially what the defeat of Reconstruction shows. And actually, like, I really resonated with what you described in the second pillar of the Black Freedom Movement when you said the Black Freedom Movement, which is much farther beyond the 50s and 60s, is about the refusal to accept second-class citizenship, to resist against second-class citizenship, and that it is a life and death question. And I mean, to me, that's when I said like I feel, and I feel shy saying it now. When I think I said I feel black, what I really was trying to say is, to me, that's a life and death question for me. Like, it was a realization that I refuse to both submit to a society where I know I am inferior to white people, to go beyond that and be like, I'm not inferior to white people. I mean, I've known that my whole life. Like, I've known that since I was a child. I just didn't have the language for it. And I know it's not the same as, like, you know, you doc or whatever, but I mean, I can resonate with it. And I refuse to be in a society that takes innocent children and raises them since childhood to know that there is such thing as second-class citizenship. And that's a life and death question. I mean, we can call it politics, you can call it existential, but I mean, that's for me, it's an existential moral question of revolutionary change. And it's also why, like, in my language, I just know that I have extreme loyalty to what we call the Black freedom struggle. And I know to some people it might seem dogmatic, but I mean, it's both a personal and political revolution for me.
Right.
And I know it to be true because, like, actually visiting the institutions of Black gods is so freeing. Because in some ways, I think that these institutions of Black gods, like the Nation of Islam, the United House of Prayer for All People, Father Divine's Peace Mission, which still, like, you know, is, you know, dying out because they believe in celibacy, but they still, like, the ideas still live on in the museum. When you see the commitment, I'll start with, I think they actually have developed perhaps a new and advanced language of describing what we're calling the paradox of now and the resolution. I think I sense in their theology, worldview, and language, something that is an advancement and very freeing to me. Like I find a lot of resources in that. Where they're basically like, no human being is white. We're all Afro-Asiatic men. There is no such thing as a white man. There's only Afro-Asiatic men. There's only humanity. There's only all people. There's only human beings. That's all over. They have different language for it, but it's all over all of their institutions.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more moving than to go to the United House of Prayer for All People. And you go to many different, you can go to the one in DC, you can go to Mother Church in South Philly, you can go to North Philly one. You will get a 30-person brass band playing their hearts out, not playing to God, but because they believe they are the messenger of God.
Right.
Every single one of them. Playing a trombone, a tuba, a sousaphone, whatever instrument it is. And they all play many different instruments. Not just to hear, but to see Black men so beautiful and unabashed and unlimited in that expression of sound. They're not playing for an audience because some of the congregations aren't even that large. They play every day. I'm pretty sure they play almost every day. And they don't play for money, and they don't play for an audience, and they don't play for popularity. They don't play to get a record deal. They don't play for any of that. They play because they believe in the divine. They believe in the perfect human being. They believe that they carry God. And I even see it, and then I just know that a lot of what we ourselves as revolutionaries and how we have changed and the message that we have developed together, taken through DuBois, taken through Robeson, taken through King, and just taken through musicians who we listen to, taken from the institutions we go to, the churches, the mosques. I just know it to be true. Like, I believe I've been given the gift of an alternative worldview, and I don't think it's just accidental. I think I'm very Chinese. I was raised with Chinese values, and ironically, I was raised by parents who gave me Chinese values, who didn't realize that they were raising me because they wanted me to be white. But they gave me both, right? They gave me the expectations of succeed and maybe marry a white person. But at the same time, they gave me the values that made me want to resist white society.
Yes.
And
Yes.
where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I see it in my work. Like, I talk pretty openly to some of my closest members and coworkers at this point, who are, they're in Philly, and they've lived whole lives. Like one of my favorite coworkers, she was a member, and she really likes Sophie, but she lost her. I'm pretty sure her daughter was murdered, and she's raising her grandchildren, and we talk really openly about many different things. And I was basically telling her in a certain language, telling her about my life, where I was like, yeah, my sister and I think were raised to be white. And my sister and I dealt with it in different ways. My sister tried her best in the white world, and I grew up with a lot of bitterness and resentment. And I don't think that's the solution either. Bitterness and resentment is not the solution. I'm not trying to live in reaction to white supremacy. Yeah. I'm trying to be what I think white supremacy realizes the future. I'm beyond that, and that's the Black freedom struggle. I don't need to be bitter because I think I don't need to be bitter because I think you have a lot to learn from me, have a lot to learn from Black folk, have a lot to learn from the world, from China, all of that. And I was telling her about all this stuff, and she was like, you are really special because I think in her language, it's her expression. She was like, oh, you know what, that was really heartening to hear because I always knew that despite the way you look, I think it's because she thinks I dress white or whatever. She was like, but despite the way you look, you always reminded me of a hood rat Chinese girl. And that was her way of saying, that was her language basically saying, like, we share a worldview.
Right.
And we share values. And, I hope I didn't go too personal because I actually ultimately think this is a highly political and existential question. I think we ourselves are living actors and part of the experiment of what would it take for the American people to cease being white and actually create equality and achieve democracy? So yeah, that's kind of my reaction to what you bring up.
I also wanted to add is, Doc, you said this thing about how now we talk about a revolution of the people as opposed to the black struggle.
Right.
But I think, I mean, it's perfectly clear to me that the heart of this revolution of the people is still the black struggle,
Yes.
in its substance, in its vision, in the kind of men and women that it was trying to create, which is also what Emily's description, I think, captures. And the other thing I wanted to put into the mix is, like, I really appreciated how, I mean, even the stuff that you said about what parties were supposed to
Right.
mean and all of that, you know. I mean, this is essential knowledge to, like, for anybody trying to do politics today, an understanding of these things go that much farther in, like, in being able to understand for ourselves where we stand, what position is right, and so on. And one of the thing I was thinking, and this is also something that I really got out of the interview, is how, like, the question that Emily was asking is humanity, civilization, peace, love compatible with white supremacy? Or is it completely incompatible? One could also add to it knowledge and science. You know, is it compatible? Because if you take what the purpose of knowledge and education is supposed to be, which is to expand your life world, but also in some ways expand your commitment to what you're going to live for, set you free. I mean, knowledge setting human beings free. I think this is completely, it's impossible under a world which is, whose logic is the logic of white supremacy. And I feel like Du Bois, but all of these people that we Doc brought up, Du Bois, Robeson, Baldwin, I mean, the great thing is, in their hands, knowledge becomes democratic. Knowledge actually, like, and even like Doc, I mean, this is what I was thinking of when you were talking about the parties and so on. Like, really, to be able to inherit, even from the, even from history, but from the present situation, to be able to inherit knowledge and science as not a way to separate yourself from the people and become part of the elite, like, you know, young people are induced to in universities today, but to actually bring you closer to the people, actually bring you into a position where you can be of service to the people, is something that shines so much in the black tradition. And that's also something we're trying to celebrate now, knowledge and revolution together. But anyway, I just wanted to
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the other reason I'm gonna address this issue because I know it just dawned on me since I started back in preschool, we have a lot of music scholars. First time I've been in a group where people don't play music. See, I've always been around these performers, and they don't like to talk too much. And then even the scholars, they don't play. So you have to be tight. Yeah, the only reason I'm gonna address this issue because in the future, when you do research, I'm suggesting some consideration. And I would say, and I'm going to not dumb it down, but I'm going to streamline it and not get too academic. The considerations for identification of musician types, meaning is the musician a black, is he expressing black? Is his goal to make sure everybody knows he's a black musician, you know, and how does he do it? Does he do it through, is it the art of improvisation, or he doesn't name his song with anything that shows consciousness, but his performance style is the blackness. You know, then you have some black composers who really write music, but they don't play. And they'll call it involved, Juba dance, and they won't play. Now, I've identified 8, and I'm just saying this in your future research, to consider. You have to look at it like a continuum. A person could start out this way and end up after 10 years this way. And when I say that, here's the delineation. Okay, there's the urban popular music. I guess you call it dance music. Some people call it R&B. But that local, the masses consume. That would even include rap, this and that. Now you have the second genre, jazz standard, meaning a lot of jazz musicians from the 50s, well, actually, we go between the First and Second World War. Like you take all the leaves, Shadow of Your Smile, sheet music written by white composers, Irving, but the black musician changed the style. So the question is, do you look at the composer, Irving Berlin, so he's playing white music, or do you look at the way the musician does it? Like Coltrane when he did My Favorite thing. Roger, I think the composer did a lot of music. Okay, yeah, exactly. You got a lot. You have quite a bit. Sound of music. Oh, look, the first one, urban popular. Okay, jazz standards, music written by whites, but modified by the black musician. Then you have the avant-garde school, and some of them overlap. Okay, what do you mean by avant-garde? A lot of times it's instrumental. Love Supreme, that's playing, what's the symposium Mingus. You know, this idea of just going off the deep end. You got like the jam section, you know. Then you have the musicians who expression of national or cultural identity. Sweet Honey and Rock, for example. Now, I'm not saying they don't do something else, but these are actually, when you first meet musicians, you can find out where they're coming from. And then the question is, where they are when you talk to them, did they start one way? For instance, if you deal with a singer who's naturalist, maybe they start out singing gospel music. Does that mean she was a Christian? You know, so it's important to know where the person came from. Then you have the individual expression. Now, this in an individual ideology, you know, a person who you can't even identify. You don't even know what they love when you do music. And then you have the music, people who play music like this Mother Bethel as an expression of faith. I know a lot of gospel choirs, they're very secular. They look for that God. It does seem about God, but as soon as they leave the church, that's the last thing that goes back. Then you have the active commercial musicians, they call them giggers. You know, like you jump from one band to the other, that's the highest bidder. Then you have, the ones who study temple or wherever the conservative want to get concert pianist. Now, does the concert pianist who plays the white class music, is he expressing his black? How about the concert pianist who plays compositions written by black composers? You have a long literature of African American rhythm, starting with W.C. Handy. He wrote a symphony. So they're actually written in a European style. The question is, do you say, well, we've got a black composer, the bass is black, but the style is white. And then it's really, to use an example, Charles Pettaway, University Lincoln University. Well, he came out, studied at Madison Garrett Temple University. If you didn't know him, you think he just played trap music. He has a gospel choir in Germantown. He's had for like 40 years. He improvised. So if you only see him in church, you think he just plays trap music. If you only see him in Lincoln, you think, you think he plays gospel music. And when he plays gospel music, he's going. Now, when you play Showtime, so what do you call it? Bi-musicality. And I'm going to conclude by saying there are many faces of blackness in music. And I'm just saying, I would it gets into interviews, like we do biographies, like what we're doing in a doctor. If you don't know him back before he went to Temple, when he lived in Jesus' house, you don't know him. So you can't look at him and you can't say, well, yeah, he was at the communist. No, you don't know him. Now, if you could get all of Dr. Monroe from when I met him until now and get the panorama view, you say, oh, I see city blackness. I'm going to stop there. I just noticed that we have a lot of you have impressed me the way you did the music research. And then you have some people who are actually talented. They have music in them. They may not do it here, but I know from talking to a lot that I can feel it. Like when some people know me, if I go to Philadelphia, They knew me as ourselves. They had no idea I played class. Some people knew me as teaching at Southern, teaching people to play rock music. Some people knew me playing a bass on the snow. They go to Pennsylvania. They said, what is that music playing? I said, well, that's a Latin jazz. Oh, some people know me playing with Puerto Rican band that sing the same. Then I played with a Latin jazz band, all instrumental, bossa nova. So the question is, who am I? Like Nina said, who am I? So before you judge, see, one thing I'm good at is I have patience, and before I press judgment and pigeonhole people, I always make sure I know every dimension of it. It's not easy. It's easy to do, oh, I'm MAGA, I don't like you. Well, I'm not MAGA, I don't like you.
Right.
See, this preschool was unique, really, to me. You could come in here looking like you're from Mongolia and wonder, well, I guess. No, the preschool, you come in one way. After being around and really expressing yourself and hearing the doctor speak, then you say, well, it's all right to be who I am. I'm not African American, but I understand what they went through. Oh, that's horrible. In other words, the preschool is a platform, forum, to be whoever you want to be, how you want to be. And it doesn't matter if you're high school dropout, former terrorist, even if you're ex-con, if you're willing to open up. I don't want to go off the deep end. I just wanted to encourage you, because I'm involved in research, and I'm thinking of myself too, because it's almost like being bipolar. Certain days I may want to, like when I have a student, I play a fermented sonatina, and the student expressed to me the other day, he wanted to know autumn leaves. And then I play autumn leaves with the ragtime style, and then I played it in a little jazz style, so I want to play it that way. And what I discovered was, I had to start with him with what moved him, not put him through all this practical stuff first and then do the jazz. I had to shift my gears, and here's where pedagogy comes in. Well, how do you teach somebody an instrument? I know how to start with autumn leaves, write a little arrangement out, then he puts the rest in, and that's the beginning of jazz. So, John.
Well, hearing you talk about the music is nice because it makes me think about some of our musical discoveries through the years as free school. But I wanted to say with Autumn Leaves, I feel that jazz is like the universal musical language of the modern world. And I was thinking of this video where I think like in Italy, an Asian and Italian on the street encountered each other and they played Autumn Leaves together. But I don't think you could say that the same with Western classical. I mean, the same possibility exists with Western classical, like that same type of ideological interaction. But then also related to what Emily had said and like you had been saying, it made me think about it made me think about Tina Marie, but I wanted to say someone else actually. It made me think about how when we were organizing maybe the China conference or the 10th anniversary, you were always sharing music with us, but then also through the years. And there's some that really stick out to me, like Sparkle by Aretha Franklin, the discovery of Tina Marie. And then like a few of us were like, why didn't you share about her earlier? Because she's white. And you said, oh, you guys weren't ready. But then during the planning, you had shared this video of Southeast Asians who were singing Michael Jackson, like Show You the Way to Go, and these Thai singers. And I mean, watching the way the world picks up this music, I think, is also evidence of some of what you're describing in terms of that intercivilizational kernel of the Black movement. Your remarks were so powerful because it reminded me of King's Pilgrimage to Nonviolence. I mean, the way you laid it out, where you're saying, this is how I was trained, and it was an extremely important training because it established the centrality of the ideological struggle to revolutionary struggle. And you said that it was the collapse of the Soviet Union that made this assessment possible. But once the architecture of the movement had dissolved, it gave us the opportunity to realize that we had overlooked Du Bois and the revolutionary heritage of the Black freedom movement. And at the same time, King had been assassinated. And yet, with his triple evils, with his Poor People's Campaign, and then especially Diane Nash and Coretta Scott King carrying his legacy forward into the world peace movement, like, I feel that free school is really taken from these strands that the strands of the world peace movement and the Black freedom movement that are, you know, that have been kind of like ripped apart in a way that we're trying to make whole again. And then so like hearing the way that you have ideologically made sense of your own life in motion with the development of the world crisis is very useful. And I wanted to say that, like, Emily, what you're saying made me think about Tina Marie and what makes possible Tina Marie, right? Like that song, but also Tina Marie as a human being. But the last thing I wanted to say that was really clarifying was when you identified the betrayal of Reconstruction and that framework as essential to understanding the Afro-American worldview. And the reason it was useful to me is because I think that we're really operating out of the betrayal of the civil rights movement. And the way that I would describe that transition is how, how it's essentially become a civilizational question. And I don't know if I'm saying it well, but I'll give an example. Like 150 years ago, how does a white person make the moral choice? And you really have the example of a John Brown. But I think with the civil rights movement and everything the Black freedom movement produces, you have many, many, many new pathways for that moral choice to be made in an intercivilizational context. For example, a Tina Marie. I mean, it doesn't, making the moral choice doesn't have to look the way it looks for John Brown anymore. There are so many more like new pathways for the moral commitment to the Black freedom struggle to be made. And so I think part of what I wanted to say is that I feel that the betrayal of the civil rights movement and the Black freedom consciousness from that period is like essential to the character of the American people and our future today. And this is more of a question, but like we talked about the development of the Black Reconstruction. The Black social system emerging out of the betrayal of Reconstruction. For example, the Harlem Renaissance, the Great Migration, industrialization, the Black worker, etc. And my question is kind of, when Du Bois describes the system as a civilization in potentiality, how would we assess its civilizational character today? Because I feel that with the Black freedom movement and King's leadership, social system is maybe not enough anymore. It really feels like the civilizational basis for the American landscape today. It's become more total, you know?
Yeah, I really love I love the question. And my mind is racing over time. I feel like just to also try to catch up with where you're thinking about.
Speak up a
I'm
little.
just trying to catch up to where you're thinking. And actually one of the questions that I guess came to my mind similarly was, would there be any kind of historically analogous organization like the Free School in a previous period, even within the Black freedom struggle? And I'm not sure that there would be. I think we are something of a new type, which is the fruit of both, as you were saying, the Leninist construal and Leninist tradition, but even more so, the Black freedom tradition. And before today, I was actually, to try to prepare, I was looking at some of the handbooks for different civil rights organizations like CORE, SNCC, And it's really interesting because, yeah, I was like looking up this one handbook that was like basically a call to enlist in the Freedom Army in the South. And I don't know, it was really interesting. But yeah, I was just thinking about it because I was also, I guess the other thing that came to mind was your essay, The Declassification of the Negro Intellectual, in which you very strikingly end by calling for not just a new or better intelligentsia, but you were like, we need to return, or like you were bringing up the Enguabe crucial triad concept, which is, I think it was grassroots organization, mass mobilization, and then advanced ideological contingents of the people. And you kind of say similar things because also I was looking at the Black Radical Tradition Conference, and I think you end that too by calling for vanguard leadership. And I don't know, I'm just bringing up different things, but I'm trying to place where preschool is in history, why we're constituted in the way that we're constituted, to try to understand ourselves better and our task better. And yeah, because like, I think part of what I think we draw from the Leninist tradition is, like people said, the struggle of ideas, but it's also the very clear conception of the struggle for state power. I think that comes so much from Lenin, and I think it's important that we draw from that. But I think the thing that, at least from my interpretation, the thing that we draw from the Black Korean tradition is, yeah, like what you call the all humanity, the all people mode of struggle, which is like you can't even just identify the civil rights movement only with SCLC or only with SNCC. They were part of the vanguard of it, but it's like to explain the civil rights movement, you have to account for the artists. They were as much at the vanguard of struggle, and it's like, but that's something you can't pin down to like a party organization, you know. And so I think in that sense, like we draw from that as well, in our concept of the mode of revolutionary struggle is something which will have to be much larger than was previously construed. And yeah, because I was curious, I was like really struck by what you were talking about, where the Communist Party strived to be a mass party. And I was like, okay, like what does that mean? Because I'd also been thinking about it in relation to like the Indian National Congress during the Indian freedom struggle, which was a mass organization, which I kind of always seen as kind of parallel with SCLC or something like SCLC. And I think part of what makes it different is like, even if you were to bring it to today, like what is this question, like what does it mean for something to be like, have a mass quality is not for us, not just about the number of people involved, but the quality of consciousness involved. Because it's like, for instance, you could contrast the No Kings rally, which objectively has a lot of people, and contrast that with something like the Million Man March. Also a lot of people, completely different in quality because of the consciousness of the people. And it's not, in that sense, like, yes, we are interested in like what must become a mass movement, which must involve a lot of people, but it's also about the quality of the people and the quality of the consciousness involved. And I don't know, I'm kind of thinking through a lot of this stuff because I don't know, I just feel like the way that you laid it out is it taps into a lot of the questions that I've had too about what kind of organization are we, both through law and by chance, you know, because even to get into the intercivilizational component, part of it has been chance, like us meeting together. But part of it is, you could say, you can identify I feel like what you call deep structures of civilizational consciousness or civilizational inheritance and human qualities, which you identify with, like the deep structures of, let's say, East Asian, Confucian, Chinese civilization, or Indian civilization, which in especially this moment of history, like is ripe to come into new contact with the black
Yeah.
struggle, the kind of nascent Afro-American civilization. So there's some kind of law-like
Yeah.
pattern to it, but it's also very much also, chance. Like it wasn't like I don't see it as predestined that even though we also talk about destiny and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about like where is free school, because we're not really SCLC. We're not really even SNCC in that sense. And at the same time, like we're not a Leninist party either. And maybe we're similar to like an artistic collective, but not even that at the same time. And so it is like kind of I'm trying to wrap my head around what are we? And because I think that does clarify what we contribute. But yeah, because I think another crucial part of it is like drawing from the philosophers, like drawing from the Black tradition. So much of what made the civil rights movement possible was the existing organic social organization of the people, which was especially in that time the churches. And we're trying to rediscover that in our time. And to understand what that would mean, especially in the context of a united people's movement for a new time, a new century, for a new revolutionary stage. But yeah, again, I feel like I have a lot of questions, which I'm glad that we're talking about, because I think it's something that also we can only really resolve through the practice of the free school itself and experimenting and trying new things.
Going to add something, the outsider and the insider. As I said, I was following during the pandemic over in North Carolina, and then by me knowing the doctor, I was a visionary, always trying to make people aware so they're not forced to change, but they change themselves. See, what I see with free school is first phase to unfold everybody's MO. Then you share stories. They say, no, we have a lot in common. And I've always seen it as a projection into the future. And I made the comment something about the calendar 10. I mean the idea of building up a community of people who go from different professions. Okay, even when you go out to work or something, you can have a cup of coffee with someone at Starbucks, and next thing you know, they want to know, well, where's the free school? In other words, it's kind of like your unofficial recruiters. So you talk to people not saying, oh, here's a card, come. But they'll talk to you and wonder, why is this person so interesting? And you say, oh, because I go to free school on that. Well, what's free school? People ask me, well, how much, what's the tuition? That's what tuition. I said, it's not so much based on tuition, but we take a little collection in the evening. That sounds like a church service. I said, but there is a different themes each week, but the common denominator is consciousness. Where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. And the consciousness is, for instance, like when some of you tell me being of Korean descent and growing up, and you little, and you wake up and you're wondering why are your parents discouraging you to eat brown people. It says it, but then you get older and say, well, wait a minute, that was those are the people that built this place. I think I better get hooked up with them. They probably, if they can survive 300 years of just being dismantled and bamboozled, then there must be really some smart people. See what happens by me teaching ESL and been doing that for a long time. I noticed people, when I was in Honduras, they used to wonder, well, how is it all the gringos can't speak Spanish? They're teaching English, but they were monolingual. He said, and they called me the trigueño, color please. Now, why is it that the trigueños speak Spanish and Portuguese and the Americanos don't? And I said, well, I said, we had to always be 3 and 1. They just had to be a half or maybe 80%. We had to, well, I said, they don't have the demands that we have there. It's about how do you know all this stuff? And then it dawned on me is what you see what happens in preschool when they meet, when you always meet somebody outside and the conversation comes up, they're going to want to know where you're getting this knowledge. And I see it as change happening, but not a forced change. You know, and it's not even deliberate language as much as I want to be like Jeremiah. Why are you so smart? But not smart like when you took somebody's course at Temple, but a type of knowing yourself. All of you seem to know who you are, you know. And then I'm learning about that. That's why I'm taking notes. I didn't know. So like this, I didn't know that. And then I learned what you like. I learned whether you went to church when you were young. And I said, oh, so-and-so, I thought that so-and-so was an atheist, or I thought so-and-so was agnostic. You know, you can be reared in the church and you come to the preschool and you bring that experience. You actually have some information and data to compare. So wherever you came from. And I just want to say, I see you as being proactive, and you have you definitely, when you leave here, you are destined to make a change.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was sitting there listening. I just want to say, I've been here about 8 decades, and I was thinking about imagery. And when I was a kid, we played cowboys and Indians, and nobody wanted to be the Indian. They always wanted to be the heroic cowboy, because in all the movies we saw, the cowboy always killed the Indian, and they were the heroes. And so, you know, I was listening to everybody, all the young people here. You are the successor, you are our successors. And you have a mission, a very profound mission to carry out a legacy, a new legacy, developing a new legacy. And when you think of war and peace, it can't be done without the consideration for the respect for human dignity and life.
Yeah.
And without dignity and life and supporting each other, there could be no democracy. And it's just, I was always thinking about, without struggle, there can be no result or victory. And struggle is an ongoing process that's to me, everlasting. And no matter how dark things may look or appear, you can never give up. And I'm just proud to be around these young successors. It makes me feel good that the struggle still continues.
I meant to add that in because that's the dimension of it. Because it's so mature, I don't think of age as much as wisdom when I need to talk. But I meant to add that handing down the tradition from us with old heads, the old heads.
Let some Bartok go ahead.
Right. Well, I mean, I wanted to just respond to what you were saying, and also go back to a little bit of the earlier discussion because of some of what you were saying today. I mean, we've talked about this a lot before, but the centrality of ideas, and especially what you were saying, this part about which also people responded to, that there was this time where you had to really defend an alternative worldview, a system that was coming from the world communist movement. And it made me think that, I mean, because we talk about this a lot, about looking at the left today, looking at the white left and so on today, this intellectual laziness, but also a certain inability almost to move ahead, move forward with ideas. And I think with the tradition that free school comes out of, and especially how you were talking about the time after the fall of the Soviet Union, this to be able to move forward with ideas also means that you can't do it unless you are transformed by them yourself. And we talk about ideas because ideas do transform people, and that's what it means to carry it forward. It also means that everything that we stand on today, it means we are standing on at the stage of history, and also on the shoulders of people who came before us. And I don't just mean the people from the pages of history, but people in free school also who came before us. And I was just going to say that this idea of being dogmatic about ideas, this not being able to move forward, I don't think it's that uncommon at all. And maybe this is not the best analogy, but it made me think of like how, for instance, Howard Thurman, and not just Howard Thurman but many others, talk about Paul, that in a way that Paul was one of the most fanatic defenders of the teachings of Jesus. But Thurman's argument to some extent is that he was not completely transformed by it. And I think this is something, especially for us going forward, it's something that I think should be at the front of our minds, that we like, this is the inevitable conclusion. You inevitably become dogmatic if you try if you try to defend ideas which have not yet transformed you. And I think we in free school, like I was thinking of the question that Jeremiah raised, so and what kind of an organization is the free school, and whether or not it could exist before or not. I think something that is unique about what we are trying to do, what the free school is trying to do, is that we are not just involved in taking these ideas to the people, but actually understanding what that means is to let these transform you. And I wanted to say that because of the discussion before. And the other thing I wanted to say was this like really the like what you said, the lie of the American democracy, and what Emily was talking about as a paradox of the modern world. Like really the paradox being that who is fit to rule, and who is fit to who is fit to contribute to art and beauty and truth. And this kind of, I mean, DuBois also, I think the way he saw the Russian Revolution is also this. I mean, he talks about it like it was this great experiment to test this hypothesis, which was long, which has been long disputed, the hypothesis that out of the buried, the submerged masses of the world, you can have genius and intelligence to rule. But I think more than the Russian Revolution, it is his engagement with Asia, especially China, where because he says something like he understood the meaning of a people for the first time when he goes to China. And this is what like, this is not even like, this is before the Chinese Revolution. This is in the, I think, the 30s. And he says that, yeah, this is like, he sees something about about the meaning of what it means to be a people. What does a civilization mean? And this idea that a new kind, like what you were also talking about, a new kind of civilization, and really a new stage of democracy, where, I mean, Dubois's thing has always been that democracy is not an end, but rather it's a method to to what he calls to discover aristocracy. I mean, he means, like, by aristocracy he means like genius coming from the people who can intelligently take humanity forward and contribute to art, civilization, beauty, culture, science, and knowledge. All of this. I mean, all of this he sees as an experiment, and I think it. I mean, I think it is the most unforeseen genius for him to talk about the to see it in the framework of the unity of Pan-African Pan-Asia as a resolution to the problem of the color line. And yeah, I was saying this because I think this was, and I think it still is, I think it still is the at the vanguard of how we think about the world, how the free school thinks about the world, and going forward, increasingly, people around the world have are going to look at it this way, because the world and the struggle does look different in different parts of the world. And like Dubois was not just talking out of the back of his mouth. I mean, he was involved with the revolutionary movements all over the world. I was struck by in 1928, when he writes Dark Princes, he's like, this is a time when the Indian freedom struggle is still ongoing. The final stage has perhaps just begun with the coming of Gandhi, and even then, what he says is that the nature of the struggle is very different in Black America and in India at that time, where on the one, in America, the struggle is for what he called then the democratic control of industry, and in India, of course, the question is national liberation first, and then. But I think the way he saw the need for a framework that unifies the struggle, even when it does look different, even when the immediate objectives and strategy for a freedom movement, of course, does vary from place to place. I think it was, it's just, it seems to me an unforeseen genius that he came out as. And I think this is why when we talk about intercivilizational unity, like you were saying, I think increasingly now this also makes me think that free school, that the Society Free School is an organization for the world, because it shows us really, like, when we talk about, I don't know who said this, maybe you, like, honoring a civilization, and what does it mean that we are all from different civilizations? Because it's not like, when we say honoring or inheriting a civilization, we're not just talking about who we are, but to inherit history means to see yourself as a part of that history, an agent of that history, and then of course your future is tied to the future of that civilization. This is increasingly how I think young people all over the world need to look at the world. I just wanted to say that because the discussion about the um, civilization and inheriting a civilization was very moving.
There's a lot of competition. Yeah, well, I think part of what you were saying when you were describing like the party structure and the importance of ideas, it's not just like ideas for the sake of ideas, but specifically you said ideas, you change ideas in order to change ideological relationships in society. And I think that formulation is really important because it doesn't necessarily require a million people to directly change the ideas. But in changing those ideas, you actually are able to change ideological relationships. And I feel like that's really concrete and really important because, for instance, I was thinking about, like, why is it that I feel so at home in the free school? And, like, what it means that, like, basically we found ourselves here. And some of it is that the ideological struggle, this whole intercivilizational framework, it makes, like, even me being like Korean American, and Asian immigrant, it makes it make sense. And it makes it possible to actually have a principled relationship to the Black freedom struggle and to Black people in this country. And that is an existential question because otherwise, what models do you have of how to live? You basically have the default of poverty life. And changing the ideological relationship makes it possible not just to, like, think of yourself as a different person, which is important, but to actually be able to live in a certain way to change society. And I just feel like what it provides is, like, you're actually able to be free. And I think some of it is that it's not like when we're talking about Lucian Blackwell, like the Asian values of, like, hard work, intelligence, like propriety, law, like, that's not enough. Like, I really don't think it's enough. And what I get and what I so appreciate about Black people in the Black struggle is that there's courage. Like, when you said, like, why didn't you fly? Like, why didn't you go all the way? Why don't you strive to, like, actually just have the moral clarity and the courage? And it's kind of like, what is the point of having the skill or the capacity to do things if you don't push all the way for, like, freedom? And yeah, and I just think that changing that ideological relationship, like it gives everything. And I was thinking about how like in the 10th anniversary, this idea of the sky, like providing a sky so that you can actually fly. But then in some ways what we inherit is actually the ground on which we can struggle to do that. And yeah, I just think that like changing these ideological relationships, like how we even relate to each other. And in some ways for me, like through the interview process, it's not like I don't know, like talking to you and feeling like we are like actually comrades in the struggle. Like we're in the same struggle together. And we might be of different generations. But like when I was looking at the photos of you like as a young man, I was just like, oh, like if we lived, like if we were young at the same time, like I know how we would work together and like struggle together. And that is how we struggle together now. And yeah, I just think that changing those ideological relationships in some ways does change like the deep structures of society. And it makes it make sense where in the if the struggle is against the color line, instead of it being just black and white and an isolated struggle, it's actually that there is a role for the other civilizations to play and to make a stand. And to say that actually white supremacy is abnormal. It is not civilizational. It is divorced from humanity. And it's actually the people, it's all humanity against the warmongers who destroy all civilizations. Yeah, so it's
I wanted to respond back to you and then also to Emily on the question of how this is an existential moral issue. And then I hope I sound like Tati. I want to give my own.
Speak up a little bit.
I hope I sound like Tati, but I want to give my own vocabulary because I do think I'm going to try to say the same thing. But Doc, when you were talking about the ideological struggle and growing up in the struggle, I think that, so tell me if I'm saying this wrong, but there's a Romans Bildung, a building, sorry, Bildung is Roman, of, your life, especially seeing those pictures, but everybody wants those pictures, but what you were saying reminded me of something I heard in the Nation of Islam about the relationship between Bard Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad, which was that Bard Muhammad created a body of knowledge, and Elijah Muhammad extracted from that a reason or a way of living, and you take it back to the word that Hegel used. What you were saying earlier about Marxism and its dead end and how free schools, in a way, we're sort of extracting the rational kernel, the way that Marx extracted the rational kernel of Hegelianism. We've attempted to extract the rational kernel from all the different sciences and traditions, I'm more from a tradition of politics. I came to the free school from politics, but Fatih is right. We do have a lot of artists, and for me, what I've learned about art and its importance in the struggle is that art is one way for human beings to express something deep inside of us. I don't even know if we can put a word to it, but we haven't even gotten that far. But I think we talked about it in your Baldwin, and Du Bois really, that's what we've been trying to study from Du Bois. So art, especially black art, is a representation of a person's internal striving, and we've been, through Du Bois's fantastic method, examining, what Jeremiah was saying, the quality of these people, the working black people, the black proletariat. And then the last thing I want to say is related to, what Emily was saying about the moral choice and the immigrant identity. A lot of people have said that, one, free school doesn't quote do the work, and then two, free school is mostly Asian. And I think that in this time, some people called it the rise of Asia. or the rise of BRICS, and preschool does look like the BRICS nations. It reminds me a lot about it reminds me of the time that the civil rights movement was starting up, where all these African countries were rising, and it made young African Americans question their place in the world. And what the Black struggle and really, UDOC and the Saturday preschool have given to me is a method of fashioning an identity that isn't founded on, its foundation is not the default, the whiteness, as Mary was saying, but, something as Baldwin would say, a Baldwinian reality for someone like me to establish an identity. And this goes to what you were saying about what Kathy had said about the bitterness of growing up Asian in this country, Asian American. And I have a rocky relationship with my parents, and it really helped when you came over for dinner. And because my parents didn't know I was involved in politics. So when I got arrested, they were like, "What the hell is going on?" And you came over and you were talking about Antifa, and you were telling my mom that no, you don't want me around people who mask up and break windows. My mom, that reassured her. And but it was able to, I've been basically that's my personal story, my personal experience of how the preschool, one replaced my relationship that wouldn't be possible with a white identity, with Samir's white identity, and but also this thing of identity is important because it will be a big question, and the relationship to African America. I really think this is it. Like, this is the question that is making so many young people restless in this country. So I really do think that preschool has it. I think this is the work.
It is quote what?
The work.
The work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to avoid saying anything because it's also emotional for me in the ways that, this journey has affected my life. But you bring up exactly where I wanted to start with, which are two things. As you mentioned, Briss, in my mind is DuBois' vision in The Dark Princess, with the world's people around the table. And I thought to myself, I dare say he was at a family reunion, so his spirit can't express, the complexities of the poetics of that vision, but Fatu has been able to express something about the soul that releases and frees kind of everybody. And, because secondly, you mentioned that period of your life when you were, I guess, was it 2016 or around, and still around that time was Black Lives Matter, different protests. And I guess in a number of ways, people would have been responding to that experience and either having met Raju and Nandita and have already interacted with preschool, or the temperature in the political atmosphere, kind of or at least I'm kind of trying to speak a little bit as to why I got involved in political activism. But essentially, that period has moved, and you're right, we're faced with a new period and a new crisis. And this crisis will have to be struggled with. And we will constitute, like our constitution will change. Preschool is not something set in stone, but we do have to answer the profound questions, like you said, that we face with. And if intercivilizational unity is on the table, then we face that question. And so then I thought about a little bit of why I come to preschool. And I know that it has to do with moral commitment to change society, to struggle. Um, and with that, there's so much I feel kind of um, I need to still learn and better myself to become a more perfect person to do the job. And um, that's why it's emotional because I'm grateful for the lessons that I've learned thus far. And also in a period of my time where I feel like I'm moving and transitioning a lot, that this or who I'm wanting to become is also somebody very reliable enough to endeavor in what it takes to change society. Um, and none of you did say it too. The point that you made about courage, I thought was important because, again, I don't think that this whole point that we're making about intercivilizational unity is self-referential, but it does mean that we're dealing with um, a time when human beings need each other to face the crisis. And what's been repeating in my mind in the past 2 weeks is building principled unity. Building unity. How do you build unity? It's been a huge question on my mind. And I agree with Michelle that the assessment of the explanation of a revolutionary struggle and also what is revolutionary in this moment, meaning what defines the revolutionary character. It's not that Black people are revolutionary because they're Black, but because of the moral choice. And in addition, the struggle against slavery, the struggle for the human, and that also, creates so many opportunities for a civilizational people to become beyond what we now face with, which is white supremacy, which also hinders human consciousness, human free thought, the ability to mature. And so that's why, the interview and different formulations that we're making now are so useful. And I don't know if it's something that this is something that Kim has said, or if it's something that I just know because of the research that we've done. But I know that intercivilizational unity is talking about the highest form of love, and or at least there is something that the Black human movement and the world peace movement, however you want to say it, or even you can explain it through King himself, have achieved to understand something about love, and something about that as a way to struggle against white supremacy or struggle for a new time or whatever. So I want to bring that up to kind of further these questions of why are we talking about uh, intercivilizational unity in this way? What are the characteristics of building a movement or even a peace movement? What do you mean by democracy? Or what would it look like? Why are we bringing up even the churches or the United Nations Prayer? Why are the Black Lives important? Why is the artist important? Because it all has to do with how we're dealing with this problem that we can't still love each other because we don't see each other as human beings. Because we're still mediated by whiteness. We're still dealing with that. Civilizational, I guess, warfare. And in change, and that's why, in a way, King is so instructive because when he's saying the revolution of values, he's speaking to how to operate or in a new way. And it has less to do with bearing arms, but bearing the consciousness to be able to, and also, like you're saying, not be on the back foot, but be able to be on the offensive, which in this time is necessary because we are turning into a space where the waters are rising, the existence of the economic system that just white countries are supposed to still maintain doesn't actually work for even the middle class, or like how, what can function, what is functioning, is knowledge functioning, like, and then we have to still say what is actually functioning in the world. And if it is Asia, if it is India, then what is interesting is what will happen if Indians, Chinese, Africans, and so on come to the black struggle, black people, situated in this country in this time. It's insane, in my opinion.
It is
And it definitely sets us up to be on an offensive, or in a way, not defensive, or needing to excuse ourselves, that we shouldn't be looking at the boys, that we shouldn't be celebrating Baldwin, that we are just trying to, become or say that we are down with black people. No, it's not a skin strategy. It's a moral revolution. Like we're talking about something, like you had said, profound, of a responsibility to maintain and build towards, because what's interesting is that people, I went to an art show last night, and a piece that someone explained to me was about how in her consciousness she's dealing, or she's dealing with the problem of how human consciousness can face, from the shadows to the light. And I thought it was kind of an interesting metaphor coming from, a woman who has Mexican ancestry from her grandmother, but she, walks around the world as though she's white, and whatever she would say, she looks like a white woman. But the thing is that the people pick up on the movement in the world and the positive frequency is what I think is actually good saying. And the human striving to be completely human, it makes sense because that hits on the head, like we had already put. You already say exactly what you mean, and I really appreciate that. What human beings or the struggle in this time is towards. If it is to become fully human, then it also would include all of humanity. It also would include a new stage of consciousness and relationships that we have in humans. And that also exists in America. And it's not just something that black people are isolated from, in the world. Which I would also propose would be an advancement due to the black freedom movement, due to the revolutionary struggle. Within the struggle against slavery, did human beings stretch beyond the stars into various civilizations to understand the consequences of the problem that they face and want to struggle against. We're talking about people who define the Bible or redefine the Bible. And the last thing that I thought was interesting about your presentation would have to do, like you had started to mention yourself, the Communist Party of China, prior to the Long March, having to retreat from the Kuomintang and rethink its, how did you put it?
Reformulate.
Yeah, reformulate the theories of evolution or something like that. Hopefully I wrote down the right thing. But I think that was really instructive for how I feel we're working on today. After the year of DuBois, after the year of Gandhi, after, we're rethinking. After the Black freedom movement, what is the best strategic step forward?
Can I just add about the art stuff, which is that, I think some of us have been really impacted by breaking the United House of Prayer for all people, and especially for me, like the phrase that I was reminded of going there a few times was this question that DuBois ends the essay Work and Wealth with, which is, interestingly, he ends this essay about East St. Louis, white supremacy, this question of labor. And he ends it with a really interesting question. He says, and shall not all be artists and all serve? And that's kind of the way that I interpreted something like the shoutdown at the United House of Prayer. where it's like, I thought we in free school do a lot. I was like, I'm tired. We have all this stuff that's going on. Like we have all these responsibilities, all these like day-to-day tasks that we have. And then I saw all these like, especially men, these black men, young men, older men. And there's one guy in particular, Deacon Jones, who we really like. And he was really warm towards Albert and me in particular. But I was just watching these guys, and it's like, it's like the pastor came up. He didn't even know he was a pastor. He just started playing on the piano, and he steps up to do the sermon. He goes back, and like you have this guy who's playing the trombone. They think he just as a trombone, but then he steps over to the piano, and then he puts on the giant tuba sousaphone thing, and then he's like playing all this stuff. And they're also reading like the church itself, and it's similar for the women. And I was just like, they inspired me to be better. They inspired me to try to be a better man, a better revolutionary. Because it's like, I think, we go to all these places and we see potential and value and worth in all of these places where the people are. But especially like the takeaway that I had from going to a place like the United House of Prayer was, it showed me what a society would look like that is devoted to beauty, completely devoted to beauty, and not just at the individual level of the personal pursuit, but at the level of a collective, a complete social fabric organization whose guiding purpose is beauty, the upliftment of beauty, the celebration of the value and the potential of human beings and what they can achieve. And it doesn't even have to be just like, you believe in God or not. Like, it's something almost beyond that. And I just want to say, too, that, the flip side of it is, because I was able to talk with the pastor of United House of Prayer, who's actually only been there for a few years, but he grew up in the church, and he was a child preacher. And he was really struck by us. Like, in the way that a lot of people are like, who are these people? But he was so struck by the energy that we brought to the house. And I think, because when we went to introduce ourselves to him, the way that, at least I tried to explain it, was like, we are followers of Martin Luther King, and we believe in the beloved community. And I was like, even what I see in the House of Prayer, to me, is a picture of what the beloved community would be that King was talking about. The next week, I went there by myself, and funny enough, the preacher, the pastor, Crawford, he ended by quoting King. And that's a sign of the kinds of relationships that the ideological relationships that we build, which is not a kind of sectarian thing, but a human thing. We have an impact on the city. And I feel that much more strong, especially strongly right now. With the celebration of God's birthday. It means something that there's a Saturday free school in the city of Philadelphia, and in America, and in the world. And it's not to boost ourselves or whatever, but it's like being comfortable and being aware of the fact that we have an impact on, even beyond what we can see a lot of times. We have an impact on people. And we shouldn't be afraid to let that shine. And the way that it's when those brothers are playing in the band, they don't leave anything behind. It's all out there. The entirety of their being is brought together, and it's not just one, but it's all of them together, and it's so beautiful. And that's the kind of also intensity and passion that I think I'm striving for, and I think all of us are striving for. But sometimes it's whether it's because of the Asian thing or because of other insecurities and doubts, it's there's you're not sure if you want to go all the way. You're not sure if you want to take that stand or to speak in that way, and you're hesitant, and I feel that way a lot of times. And but I think it means something not just for me, but it means something I think for us together, people being together in that environment, when it's you don't hold anything back, especially in terms of the human being, the heart, and again our belief in the future. And I do think that it's important for us in that sense, that's for me what it means to go on the offensive and to not be defensive about it. So yeah, I was just really moved by why is it that in free school it feels like increasingly people have to express themselves artistically? It's like you can't be otherwise. Like you have to, like basically, and like because like that was also like the takeaway, one of the takeaways I had with working on the collection of your writings, which is even when you're doing like the really hardcore ideological polemical stuff, like basically like attacking like Malachi Asante, Nicholas Essay, like Cornel West, like there's still that poetic language, that way that you write and talk, which I think especially comes out when you speak. But it's part of the substance. It's not just the form of the content. It's part of the substance of why it can mean anything to anybody. So,
You're eloquent. I noticed that when I first met him, that like he's talking about all these profound things, but it's like being in a canoe. He just flows out. Reminds me of DuBois.
Yeah.
That flow, but with the doctor's unconscious, it's just naturally, he's never trying to do anything. It just comes out. Like you open up to turn water on the faucet, it comes out.
Well, when you think about, I really like the way you put what would it look like for society to be to worship beauty, to dedicate to beauty. And I think we also got that from visiting Father Divine in where, yeah, I think it's just really stunning to meet, we got to meet a woman who became a follower of the Father Divine at a young age. And the way she just felt like a really unique new type of human being. So her character really stood out to me. And then she also talked a lot about her belief system, but her character, very sweet, warm, generous. Like even with like, I just like no offense to anyone, but like I just get really annoyed by white tourists sometimes. They weren't even following white tourists. Like they were not even following the dress code. They were just very dressed. That really bothered me. And yeah, because
they weren't even interested in following.
Yeah, they weren't, and she was so kind to them. But in my heart, I was like, but, I mean, yeah, but she's just a really, the place is beautiful. Like a dedication to using all forms of classic art to be devoted to the people, an open environment. I mean, like the stories of banquets, multi-course banquets that you can have for free. Anyone, they used to do like open banquets at the museum even, where strangers would come in, and then during Christmas, they would like expand the table so it left the banquet room, and then did like a full circle into the greeting room, and then it would go to the basement, and they would do like multi-course food where like people in the peace mission would be the waiters and waitresses and like basically treat people like they're nobility but they're ordinary people, like Fatima said, the folk. And it's just like it also felt like there was a common thing of a people, what would it look like for people to actually give their lives and their selves, so you're no longer individual but you're dedicated to the collective duty.
Well, the other thing too that I noticed with the House of Prayer was from talking with Pastor Crawford, the head pastor. I think actually they use different terms like apostle and elder, but it was like us being at the House of Prayer, and I think this is probably true too for the Father Divine Peace Mission. It was like actually what Pastor Crawford told me was he was like, actually you guys reminded me that the House of Prayer was not founded to be an African American church. We were founded to be a place for literally all people. And it was almost like because he had grown up, his whole life has been in the House of Prayer. And he's like, somewhere along the way, we became just an African American church, which is not a bad thing. But it's like, he was like, you guys being here reminded me of our original mission.
That's crazy.
And that's part of the sign of, okay, yeah, we have an impact on people.
Yeah.
And that's also, the meaning, the actual lived meaning of the intercivilization.
You want to hear some comments? Yeah.
Nuri handing it out
Can
like a treat.
There are some really nice comments.
Oh.
Michelle Barrow, well, first off, she said audio is very, very good this week.
Wow.
Thank you
Wow.
to the preschool illustrious producer.
We didn't
I think
change
it's because we're
anything.
speaking I think it's because we're speaking with more passion.
Yeah, I think so.
We
do that at a
found
public
that I
speak.
hope to join you, brethren, soon with this emoji. Someone named John Claus said, what about science, question mark? And then Alexis
what about
and Fondula said, Curtis Mayfield is great. Alexa Queen is one of my favorite songs. Coltrane is amazing. And then Fondula said, I used to like listening to Cornel West, but somewhere along the road he made a turn. And someone named Anakan said, Jamaica's motto is out of many, one people.
Right.
And Spark said, it's not the color of your skin, it's about the content within, certain Jamaican population. And then Sean said,
Yeah, they're the first.
science has proven there's only one mode, the human race. And then Magna commented, I thought it was interesting that Minister Farrakhan brought up Asian violence positively in the Million Man March speech. At first, I didn't think they deserved it. Which is true, I felt the same way. But I think he was recognizing the civilization that introduced to them with like that spirit of generosity. But without knowledge of self in Afro-America, Asians will just be technocratic lackeys.
Say that again.
We'll just be technocratic lackeys. We won't actually fulfill our potential, and we'll never know our true capabilities and inheritance. Neil Curry, a lot of first-time commenters said they gave a quote from Saul Bellow, a book called To Jerusalem and Back, that said, a great deal of intelligence can be invested in ignorance when the need for illusion is deep. And then I think John Clark was really into avant-garde, so like avant-garde, the journal to me science is democracy. And then Jahan said, I appreciate the discussion on political parties. American politics is indeed dominated by the English political party model. It's a profound point that the Black freedom movement has a far richer ideological and political history than the English or the Lenin model.
I think so. I think so.
I think it's true. We live in an era of the crisis of American political parties of all stripes, and none of them are able to resolve the crisis. And then he said, Michelle's point is really important, that the civil rights movement has opened up many new pathways to make the world safe. And in that, creating the possibilities for new model of organizations, like the Peace Corps. And then someone named Maximus Decimus Meridius said, the light shines in darkness, and darkness comprehends it not. And then they sent a bunch of flags, hashtag activism, bricks, cooperation, democracy, peace in all caps. And then David Ball said, comrades, if you can affirm yourself without reservation, hesitation, or invidious comparison, then for the first time you will see others that you never saw before, your own. And then Spark said, we all have a commitment, freedom is not. And then they said, have a great day.
Oh, you too. What a great note.
Okay, what a great speech.
I guess we'll be back for the events.
Well, yeah, just to let people on the live stream know that we will not be meeting next Saturday, and I think we'll be recording the event and putting up after that. So, see you everybody, and see you in person, whoever can make it to Philly. Bye.
Bye.